0 out of 10. No redeeming qualities. This movie is pure cinematic pain. Why does it exist? I actually host a trash B-movie group with my friends. We enjoy these movies for their unintended silliness, being over the top and weirdness and whatnot. There's also some real gems to be found amongst them once you start enjoying the whole genre. We used to rate the movies after having watched them. Only one animated movie ever scored a perfect 0, The Little Panda Fighter. War of the Worlds was worse than Pearl Harbor. The actual Pearl Harbor. Which, speaking of, you can't say anything good about the Pearl Harbor movie other than that it created this quote from Roger Ebert. Pearl Harbor is a 2-hour movie squeezed into 3 hours about how, on December 7th, 1941, the Japanese staged a surprise attack on an American love triangle. 365 Days, a so-called romance in which a woman is victimized by a rich gangster until she falls in love with him. Like, it's legitimate kidnapping and assault until she's so horned up that she just marries her kidnapper. Even as trashy romances go, this one is just insulting and disgusting. You should watch the sequels. It nosedives further and further. Wait, there are sequels? 2019's Cats was so bad I couldn't even enjoy it ironically. Literally nothing worked from the CGI, to the plot, to the weird bedroom tension between the cat people. The world got to see James Corden as a fat, hairy weirdo. He was also in Cats, but nobody saw that. United Passions. It has a well-deserved 0% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. It's a FIFA propaganda piece showing how courageous the poor, misunderstood executives on FIFA are. It was funded primarily by FIFA itself. It made something like $900 on its opening release weekend in the US. It came out at the same time the massive corruption scandals were being revealed about FIFA. Perfect timing. The stars and director have disavowed it. Tim Roth said he's never seen it and only did it for the money. I heard it won the FIFA Academy Award for Best Picture that year. No, you're mistaken. It was the heavy favorite, but Trump won that award too. Budget? $32 million. Box office? $168,132. I mean, wow. That is something else. I was never a FIFA video game kid or into soccer at all. Up until this point of my life, I've just kind of thought of FIFA as this present, ongoing neutral entity, but my lord how that perception has changed in the year of our turd 2025. LaQuisha. On top of it being washed-up Gen X comedian dog-do, there's literally a rendering error message in the middle of the movie. The Emoji Movie is up there for me. It felt cheap, forced, and like a long ad, more than an actual movie. I mean, Patrick Stewart voiced Poop. I'm not going to say that that makes the movie good, but the fact that he did that is funny. So 1 out of 10. Obligatory mention of Jordan Peele rethinking his career after being asked to play Poop first. M. Night Shyamalan's Last Airbender. The idiot couldn't keep anyone's name in its original fashion. He ruined it all. The movie shall not be named, for it did not exist. There is no M. Night in Ba Sing Se. Return to Silent Hill. Based on the trailer, I figured it would be pretty bad, but holy crap, it was completely terrible. 14 years ago, my mum was diagnosed with terminal leukemia. One evening, she wanted to watch the movie Mamma Mia. None of us had ever seen it, so my dad and I sat down with her. It wasn't really our thing. My dad and I enjoy horror, thriller, sci-fis, and action. You name it. We don't enjoy whatever type of film Mamma Mia is supposed to be, but you sit through it because your dying mum has requested it. The movie finished and we sat there in silence for a minute or two. Finally, my mum pipes up, "You know, I think that actually gave me more cancer." 0 out of 10, but 10 out of 10 delivery. For me, it's between Battlefield Earth, which is John Travolta and his Scientology pals' worst movie to date in my opinion, and that one Shane Dawson movie. I can't remember the name of it and can't be bothered to look it up. It was all poop jokes and Zachary Quinto ended up taking his name off it because it was so bad. Both of those were garbage movies. Okay, I've looked it up and the movie was called Not Cool. So that's funny at least. Leonard, Part 6. Bill Cosby should have been locked away for that and it would have saved so many women. Borderlands. Couldn't even finish it. I went to see the new Deadpool, prepaid the tickets and went in. I couldn't because I didn't have my ID to prove my age. They wouldn't give me a refund, and I didn't want to waste $50, so I was forced to sit and watch that movie. It was, not good. I legitimately forgot they made that. I couldn't believe the cast. Blonde, the one about Marilyn Monroe. It was pretentious and boring, but also it was like the guy who made it frickin' hated Marilyn Monroe and essentially thought her only identity was being the victim of mistreatment. Also, there was a truly weird sequence where her unborn fetus talks to her about how it wanted to live? Oh my god. Just a stupid, hateful, pretentious pile of crap, 0 out of 10. Battlefield Earth. This always comes up and I feel stupid as frick for actually enjoying it. Baby Geniuses 2. It's crazy how it got worse than the first one. In my high school, we had a couple of people who were heavily into acting, and they would constantly miss classes for auditions. They both landed minor roles that got them casting credits in a legit horror film. He even had a line. Very impressive. A year or so goes by, and he gets another role, with double the budget of the horror film. Holy crap! Am I now acquaintances with the future Brad Pitt? Sadly, that was not the case. It was a minor role, slightly above background actor in Baby Geniuses 2, and it remains his last credit on IMDb. My late mother was a huge John Travolta fan. She raised me on Grease and Saturday Night Fever. As I got older, I found my own stride with Travolta movies. Pulp Fiction, Face Off, The General's Daughter. Naturally, I figured, hey, you can't go wrong with this guy. I was wrong. First Wild Hogs, then Battlefield Earth. Cats. Release the butthole cut. Joe Dirt 2. Wait a minute, there was a sequel to Joe Dirt? Melania. But Amazon Prime says it's the #1 movie in America every time I turn my TV on. But it doesn't say #1 of what? God's Not Dead. Oh, that's the title of the movie, by the way. It's the cinematic equivalent of those old made-up Facebook stories where someone claims they stood up in class and defeated the dictator-type professor that always ends with the entire class cheering, with Dean Cain and Kevin Sorbo. I maintain this is in fact the worst entry to the DC movie universe. Dragon Ball Evolution. Incorrect. That movie has one redeeming quality. It was so bad it made Akira Toriyama come out of retirement. Geegly or Geegly or however it's pronounced. Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Highlander 2, the theatrical cut. There should have been only one. Jeepers Creepers Reborn. It is absolutely putrid. Holmes and Watson. I've watched The Room and Troll 2 multiple times, but I've only made it 27 minutes into Holmes and Watson. Oh, I've got one. Eragon. I'd recently read the books, and Lord of the Rings was a thing. They had the framework for what could have been a great trilogy, following what Lord of the Rings did. They had to skip so many big story beats for the paltry 130-ish minutes. I always get mad at this movie a little bit more when this topic comes up. I remember I was like 10 years old, my sister was at a sleepover, and my parents were hosting a dinner party with friends of theirs. So I had the basement to myself, a mountain of snacks, and I could rent any on-demand movie that I wanted. Having read all of the books, I was stoked to watch Eragon. I remember wishing I'd rented literally any other movie not even halfway through. It was hot garbage. Oh, a modern contender that I can think of is 2025, The World Enslaved by a Virus. I'm a big fan of trash movies, but that one ain't it. It was made by a German YouTuber who might be a criminal and some of his friends. From concept to the execution, from the editing to the sound, it is a mess. It's a Christian movie. Coronavirus and communism take over the world, and that makes religion illegal somehow? So our brave group of heroes tries to spread love and Christianity or something. Oh yeah, it's on Amazon if I remember right, so it's not some weird thingy he made for YouTube, it's an actual full movie, so it counts. Jack and Jill. I hate watch it with a friend every 10 years as a tradition. So yeah, it's a new tradition. There just isn't a single redeeming factor in that movie. If you've been fortunate enough to not know what it is, it's a movie where Adam Sandler plays himself and his twin sister, who's just an even more annoying version of Adam Sandler in drag. They even have Al Pacino look like a moron in that movie. In older seasons of Survivor, they used to have a movie night as a possible reward for a challenge, early cross-promotion, I guess. They'd get snacks and watch an upcoming film from a screen in an impromptu jungle theater. One season, the movie was Jack and Jill. The whole segment was super awkward, and I couldn't help but laugh when the winning contestants half-heartedly applauded the movie with fake smiles frozen on their faces. I went to the movies a lot with my girlfriend in the early 2010s, as we were both working adults who lived with our parents and needed literally anywhere else to hang out. And let me tell you, I saw the trailer for this movie so many times, and it ingrained a deep hatred for Adam Sandler deep within my being from the first viewing. And that is not necessarily the feeling you want your trailer to inspire in potential ticket buyers. You could tell it was a stinker just from that trailer. I also saw the Yogi Bear movie trailer too many times too, which appeared to be of a similar quality. Dragon Ball Evolution. War of the Worlds deserves to be in a pantheon with The Room and Hard Ticket to Hawaii. Hey, The Room is solidly in so bad it's good territory. You can sit down and laugh at it and enjoy yourself. War of the Worlds is just bad. It has, as the question requested, 0 redeeming qualities. It's a 2-hour-long Amazon ad and not even half as entertaining as most ads are. I've explained The Room as being like someone getting 0 answers right on a multiple-choice exam. That's a certain kind of perfection. The Room basically does every possible filmmaking concept totally backwards. Plot, editing, acting, music, cinematography, it's all just perfectly bad. Spielberg himself couldn't make a film so awful. He'd accidentally get some stuff right. So in that sense, A Room is like a perfectly bad movie, and that's the redeeming feature. It is a joy to laugh at. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? The Emoji Movie. It says a lot when the highlight of the movie is Patrick Stewart as a talking piece of poop. One of my favorite memories is going on the Sony Studios tour in LA right as the Emoji Movie was coming out. Someone on the tour brought it up, and the guide responded with, we also made Spider-Man. The Last Airbender Movie. The acting was terrible, the script was terrible, the CGI didn't match the sound effects. Every part of that movie was just awful, and that's without even mentioning the legendary source material that it was disrespecting. Alone in the Dark by Uwe Boll. It's not funny, it's not scary, the soundtrack is bad, the actors do a bad job namely because of the director, the editing is terrible, the cinematography is badly thought out and executed. It's not even entertaining for its badness, nor does it teach anything. Now, that said, Uwe Boll, if you're hearing this, please don't beat me up. I know that you're a trained wrestler, but I don't deserve to be punched because I dislike something. And yes, he actually challenges people who criticize his movies to fight him. You might as well have said any movie by Uwe Boll. That man has a magic touch to turn anything bad. The redeeming factor is watching it with friends and ripping into the movies. Eat, Pray, Love. What a piece of dreck movie. You know what's crazy about that movie? It's effectively a sequel to Coyote Ugly. It's the same woman writing about her adventures. At the start of the movie, the guys she's married to and her have got their money from Coyote Ugly being made. Also, the reason she could go on this big trip was she went to a publisher and said, I need $100,000 to write a book about self-exploration. And the book was specifically planned to have an arc like that. Also, super weird pseudo-sequels is how My Blue Heaven, a Steve Martin comedy, is a sequel to Goodfellas. Goodfellas came out a few weeks afterwards. Again, it's about the same guy, but one movie's about how before he went into witness protection and the other one is during. Manos, The Hands of Fate. All the other responses here didn't properly understand the question. Hey, Manos is 11 out of 10, a cultural touchstone. Emilia Perez for sure. The first half is just bizarre, the second half is both dull and offensive, and none of it is remotely Oscar-worthy. The acting was mid at best. So was the directing, the script was grotesque, the lighting and editing was just very poor, and Hollywood adored it. The first movie my wife and I went to together when we were just dating, without other friends, was Oxford Blues. Every bad 80s movie cliché. Rob Lowe character hacks into Oxford's computer system to change his grades and gets admitted. Cougar does the deed with him, gives him money and a sports car. She's really pretty, but nobody finds her pretty for some reason. Ali Sheedy is the cool, smart girl who Lowe can't see because he's chasing the super-hot, rich girl. Villain and rival and Lowe hate each other but are forced to work together to win the big race. Lowe and Sheedy kiss at the end of the film. I haven't seen it in 40 years and I still frickin' hate it. which is pretty funny considering it was a milestone in the relationship of my wife and me. We've now been married 25 years. Oh, this is an easy question. A Serbian film. There is not much that tops that crap, although Trauma and Human Centipede 2 are contenders. Sinbad of the Seven Seas from 1989, starring Lou Ferrigno. I remember watching it with my cousin and my grandpa at my grandparents' house back when I was a teenager. There was a moment during the movie where I looked at my grandpa and he was watching it with a straight face. That triggered me to start laughing so hard that I was crying and I had to bury my face in a pillow in one of their spare bedrooms so that nobody could hear me. For a second there, I thought you meant Sinbad, A Legend of the Seven Seas, the animated one, and I was going to be real mad at you. The Garbage Pail Kids movie. Huh? Ballistic. X vs. Sever. At one point, it was the lowest rated movie on Rotten Tomatoes. It hurt to watch. It wasn't even funny bad. Flesh for Fantasy, aka Andy Warhol's Frankenstein. Holmes and Watson. I legitimately wanted to love that movie. The premise was great. I love Sherlock Holmes, and I loved the two actors' amazing comical chemistry in Step Brothers. What could go wrong? Everything. It turns out, everything could have gone wrong. Kangaroo Jack, just for the deceptive trailer alone. Every kid in that theater was expecting a wisecracking animated kangaroo and got a comedy mob movie instead with a minute-long dream sequence about a talking kangaroo. Son of the Mask. That movie's so dumb and over the top that I can't help but enjoy it ironically. 50 Shades of Grey. I tried to read the book in 2012 after a friend complained about it to me. I say, "Oh, give it to me, I can read anything." I gave up after a few chapters. Some of the worst writing I've ever read, and I read fanfiction. I don't know how it got past any editors or became a big deal. So yeah, you couldn't have paid me to go into that movie, and I'm not surprised that that was crap too. The Left Behind remake. Not even Nick Cage is giving any effort, and it only covered about 10% of the story. Ballistic X vs. Sever. First, the title sounds like complete gibberish whenever I see it. I believe it's the two main assassins' names, but why? And watching it, even though I had heard it was dreadful, was still not worth it. The action was so subpar, and the only recollection I had was Ray Park, the guy who played Darth Maul, who's a talented martial artist, looking like he's performing some tutorial showing moves at half of his speed. I like to watch films all the way through, but this was the first time I couldn't care less how it ended. Even if my life depended on it, I can't even recall what the plot was about. 0 out of 10, and just to note, it has two very likable leads in Antonio Banderas and Lucy Liu. I hope they got paid a crap ton for this crap film. Wonder Woman 84. It just blows so bad. I knew someone else would feel the same. Look, I liked the first movie a lot. It nearly got me thinking the DCEU could turn out okay, and everyone else seemed to be saying that this one was alright. But my goodness, I was done with it from the 20-minute mark, and the feeling of discontent only grew from there. Stupid plot, and they even made me not care about Pedro Pascal, which is nothing short of miraculous. Space Jam 2. My wife said this was better than the first one, and I had half a mind to divorce her. Fant Four Stick, or whatever that movie was called. I remember a Denny's promotion for it at the time. Denny's. Oh wait, you're talking about that dog crap Fantastic Four remake from 2015 or whatever it was. Yeah, that randomly had Miles Teller as Mr. Fantastic. God. Catwoman 2004. There's genuinely nothing good about it. Bad script, bad CGI. Halle Berry deserved so much better. She even showed up to accept her Razzie in person, which honestly takes more courage than making the film did. Human Centipede 2. It is borderline unwatchable. Joker Folie Deux. I do kind of respect it for being a whole movie where the thesis is kind of why they shouldn't have made a second one. That doesn't mean that I want to sit down and watch it though. Snow White 2025. Look, I tried giving it a shot. Couldn't finish it. It's even more difficult to watch than most gore films. Bad plot, and even worse acting from you-know-who. Manos, The Hands of Fate. Campy 60s horror film, but unlike B-movies that have a certain charm and are fun to watch and laugh at, it was made on almost no budget, written and directed by a literal fertilizer salesman, do with that information what you will, and edited by two people with no prior feature film experience. It's not so bad it's good, it's just bad. Long pauses, unusual line deliveries, a random, poorly choreographed catfight, and an opening that's just music and shots of scenery taken from a car, because they forgot to add the credits. It almost hurts to watch. You might want to rephrase the question as, what movie other than AmITheA is a 0 out of 10 with no redeeming features? What was the best moments you've experienced while playing Dungeons & Dragons? The time we planned and executed a heist to steal a fortune belonging to our rogue's corrupt father. There was a lot involved, from using a magical bird familiar to recon the keep where the money was stored, to my shape-shifting character taking on the form of a guard to sneak some of us inside, to recruiting a posse of disgruntled locals to help us cart away numerous bars of silver and gold. But the best part was when, after we set off some magical alarms on our way out, the father rushed into his vault to check on his fortune and threw back the tarp covering his stack of gold and silver bars, only to find that the precious metal was all gone and the tarp was covering a live bear. Suddenly, bear. Did I mention it's a magic bear who often wears a sign saying, "Magic bear, do not eat"? As a willing forever DM, I would just like to say that I have been waiting with bated breath for this kind of story grouping to come up in my assignments. Huzzah! On to more D&D stories. My party went from revered heroes of the town they saved to hated outcasts with an official restraining order approved by the king himself when they tried to prank an old merchant and ended up murdering a beloved town elder, then trying to steal his mayorship. This sounds like someone had to roll more than a single one to accomplish that. Telling my party that the main archery store is called Target. Thinking about that brief pause followed by a few sighs and reluctant laughter still makes me crack up. My name was Doug Windchaser, but I insisted everyone call me Darkblade. Well, my whole party just kept calling me Dougblade or Duckblade or Dudblade. I had a similar experience. I told them my name was LV Sugartips. They thought I said sugar, followed by a word for a female's chest. It never changed for months of playing, and I even have a mug with them from LV Sugar Chest. Safe to say, my character has been renamed without my permission. Ah yes, the old Taserface conundrum. I once had a character called Guinevere. Everyone called her Gummy Bear. Somewhat inadvertently ended up stealing from and systematically dismantling a merchant family's bedding business across multiple cities. They were completely unrelated to the story, but we just kept bumping into them. They didn't happen to sell cabbages, did they? My character was a broken clock, right time of day kind of character. The type that would eat the only lit candle in a room just so the other party members wouldn't be able to see when they woke up. The highlight of our campaign came when I was having such crappy dice rolls that I decided to just aim for the space next to the enemy I was fighting to see what would happen. I rolled a 1, so I missed that space and hit the enemy instead. On my very first D&D session, our party was going on a treasure hunt and had just encountered a monster the DM liked to call a knuckle dragger or something like that. He had intended us to fight it like a boss battle, but before we fought, our paladin intimidated it to stand down for a turn, so we all got a free action. Or at least half of us would, since the DM rolled and said it was so hungry that it will only be stunned long enough that it will run on hunger alone. This worked great for my character. I play a sneaky human monk with literally no backbone to her and who is now trying really hard not to fight the giant ogre creature we were looking at. Just before we encountered it, we had raided a goblin camp which included having a whole bunch of jerky with us. My free action was to immediately offer this knuckle dragger all the jerky we've got so that maybe it would get full and no one would fight. Win-win. A few lucky rolls later, the fight ends before it began, with a healthily fed knuckle dragger, some level ups, and allowing us to skip a few more traps in the temple. We adopted him, by the way. His name is George. The paladin feeds him. I'll always be happy about the time my party ran into some goblins hauling oil into a ship. They opened up a barrel of oil and tossed some on the goblins, and then lit them on fire. The goblins, not being that dumb, jumped in the water. So then the party dumped oil, using a floating hand to cover a wide area, all over the water and lit that on fire too. What did those goblins ever do to you? The ship was a pirate ship that was essentially holding the town captive. The oil was actually one of the reasons the pirates were raiding, since it was in high demand in the pirate stronghold. The goblins were essentially deckhands and a hobgoblin was the captain. It was a pirate-heavy couple of sessions. Ah, pirates. Outlaws' lives a forfeit. Carry on. Why are acts of painful, Geneva Treaty violating murder so much funnier when they're carried out in this game? I may never know because pausing to work out would stop my games being so hilarious. More nautical hijinks to follow. I was DMing a campaign with a new group. Only one guy had ever played before, 5 players total. They had a ship and were traveling by sea to new quests and transporting some goods for cash when they landed. I had in mind to have them and their ship captured by pirates and have them escape later, so I sent 2 full warships at them full of pirates, hopelessly outnumbering them, thinking, "There's no way they can get out of this quest." They panicked. As the pirates got closer, arrows started flying. What did they do? Well, one of the goods they had was a high-alcohol grog, and they had a heck of a rogue archer. So they wrapped a couple of arrows in rope, dunked them, lit them, and fired them into the sails of the other ships. I made 3 separate rolls for the sequence of events between the hit, the rope holding up, and it successfully lighting up the other sails, per ship. And they fricking nailed it both times, on all accounts using teamwork and assists on skills. They burned 2 fully loaded, heavy pirate ships at sea using 2 arrows. I was in awe. I had to give them extra XP for their ingenuity. My players had to fight a dragon. They rolled shockingly well throughout the fight and were surprisingly winning. So being in the open, I had logically had the dragon flee. This was surprising given they were only level 3 and only bad rolls from the dragon had kept them alive. Most everyone got an attack of opportunity in or ran as it thrashed out of the tower, making it collapse, but the half-orc barbarian wasn't having any of it. She had a custom weapon from a special orc bad guy the party had fought. It was essentially a hook on a chain you could throw and drag people to you with, and her usual greatsword as a weapon. This will become relevant shortly. As the dragon flew up, she said she wanted to grapple it. Rolled, succeeded. Okay, you're holding onto its tail. She then spent the next couple of rounds as this massive dragon flew hundreds of feet into the air, climbing to the middle of its back. The dragon was rolling and thrashing, trying to throw her off, but she rolled great every time and hung in there. Then, she wanted to throw the hook and latch it onto the dragon's face or eye. Rolls a fricking 19. Hook lodged in the dragon's eye, and now she's riding it through the air like a venom-breathing bull at the world's scariest rodeo. Then she started hacking at the dragon's wing. At this point, she's like 300 feet in the air and is expecting this to just be a badass way to kill herself. First attack hits, okay damage. Second attack crits, almost max damage. I say that the wing shears free in a gout of blood, the brittle wing bones splintering under the mighty blow. Now she's riding an almost dead dragon as it plummets to the earth from a height that would kill anything like a green Slim Pickens, planning to go out in a blaze of glory. As the dragon and orcs smash into a building in the town, the other PCs run there to surely find their friend dead. Well, half-orcs have a feature that makes them particularly hard to kill, and I figured the spirits she worshipped would be pretty gosh darn impressed by such a move, so I gave her one last chance. Roll a con save with disadvantage. For non-D&D players, this means you roll 2 20-sided dice and take the worst of the 2 rolls. First roll is a natural 20, everyone is laughing, saying if only it wasn't at disadvantage. Second roll, another fricking natural 20. Table loses its mind. The other characters dig through the rubble, and among what is left of the splattered dragon, they find a barely alive, unconscious half-orc barbarian with a giant grin frozen on her face. I ruled even with healing magic she'd be so wounded she needed a week to recover, so the party had to drag her around in a cart for a while. But thus began the reoccurring legend of Ure the Dragon Slayer through my games. Using spring-loaded gauntlets meant for deploying quickly hidden daggers to house and launch small snakes at enemies, and the look on everyone's faces when I did this. Party was fighting Orcus, final fight of our entire campaign. Fate of the universe resting on our hands. My bard had an ability that allowed me to replace up to 4 rolls with whatever I roll. Since it was just based on enemies in an area of effect, I was able to get 2 in each time. We kept a minion alive just for this. I also had an ability that allowed me to re-roll any d20 I roll 3 times a day, so I cheesed the frick out of those 3 abilities. Orcus ended up getting dominated, crit himself because I rolled a nat 20, and replaced his attack roll with it, made him fail his save with a super low roll. Then did the roll thing again, crit him again, and made him fail, so he was essentially hitting himself for 3 rounds of combat, 2 of them being crits. He died from hitting himself, and my DM was visibly just, "God damn it." I'm not super good at the roleplay aspect of the game. I'm a new player, just under a year of playing, but my group disbanded after college ended. Anyway, my party was in a fight from a set-up stealth mission gone wrong. One person was unconscious, the other struggling, and I had the big muscular barbarian attacking me. My DM said he was a Russian Armstrong from Fullmetal Alchemist. I was pretty low on HP, and no potions or healing spells as the unconscious player was the cleric. Out of a random turn of events, I asked the DM if instead of attacking, I could use a charisma check to flirt with him. He said, sure. By the way, my character was male. Rolled a natural 20. We made out for 2 turns, and on the 3rd turn, I failed my roll, so he stopped kissing me and attacked me. On my next turn, I said, as my character, I can't believe you. I thought you were different than the rest, that you and I could make all this fighting come to a standstill by the others, seeing the true love you and I had for each other. I see that you just used me for personal gain and tossed me aside like common trash. I've never felt so abused in my entire life. Started crying and dashed away from battle. My DM said, he technically has an attack of opportunity to use on you, but he's not gonna use it. The other player convinced the enemy I made out with to come after me and beg for forgiveness. And he managed to take out one of the 2 people fighting him, and since the big barbarian had left, the other one got scared and ran. So we ended up winning the fight, I guess? The barbarian enemy became an unintended love interest for the next while, all because I didn't want my character to die. Ah, the old bard seducing an unlikely enemy trope. Even my biggest horn dog of a bard character has never gone so far as to try this, but I salute you for succeeding, my good fellow player. I always play with the same group of friends. They're good friends, but not the greatest D&D PCs. Said friends also have a tendency for their characters to change motivations rapidly without reason, even occasionally based on out-of-game info. I love my friends, but my patience was running thin with their play whatever is the most convenient attitude. In our most recent adventure, our party was mostly good, my witch being the lone, unknown holdout. Over the course of 3 to 4 play sessions, 6+ hours each, my witch began dragging each of the other characters towards evil. It started with simple acts like convincing the druid to summon squirrels to disarm a trap laid for us, and culminated in a cruel torture scene where I burned a man alive from the inside out to get info on our next target. After the deed was completed and no one stepped in to stop me, our DM announced that the entire team would have to shift their alignments to evil. They were all complicit and could no longer claim to be good. It was so satisfying to see my fellow PCs realize that the actions they took in character would have meaning, and they could not claim to be good while committing evil acts. Everyone's playstyle has evolved significantly since that point. Did you cackle in a suitable manner? You're gosh darn right I did. It was incredibly satisfying to watch them struggle with the implications it had on their characters. And for the record, I wasn't attempting to strip them of their agency. I only convinced the DM to change their alignment because they had the choice to stand up against me on multiple occasions, and time again, decided to say and do nothing. I wanted them to show me how good they were, but there wasn't much to show. One of our party fell into a river while we were crossing the ford. She rolled a 1, a critical danger roll, and fell into the rapids and was washed downstream. Our DM was lenient about it and really didn't want her character to die yet, as it was our first epoch of the game. So he said to her, roll to see if you can cling onto a branch and pull yourself out. She rolls a 1. DM is like, okay, so the branch broke and you're getting pulled further downstream. Roll again to see if you can swim to shore. She rolls a 1. DM. Wow, okay, so you see a bridge coming up, roll to see if you can hang on to the side and pull yourself out. She rolls a 1. DM. Are you kidding me? Okay, you missed the bridge, but there's an island in the river and you reach it exhausted. Up to you guys to see if you want to rescue her. Everybody agrees, we throw a rope to her to get her back across. DM. Okay, so roll to see if you grab the rope. She rolls a 2. DM. Okay, so roll again. Rolls a 3. This is insane. Okay, roll a d8 to see if you grab the rope. She rolls a 6. DM. Hooray! The team pulls you to shore. You survive. Somehow. You have acquired a new nickname, Toe-Rag the Luckless. Probably when we met a friendly yet clearly evil lich in a tower. The poor paladin, the only good aligned character in a party of mostly evil, slightly trolly players, of course attacked him before we could talk to him and work out whatever we were here for. Whatever, all good with us, we helped him kill the Lich. Then we discovered that he would only stay dead for so long. That just didn't sit right with us, so we prepared his tower a bit. We upper-decked his toilets, pooped on his coffee table, drew a picture of a horse doing the deed with a person on his door, we labeled the horse us and the person you, took the door off its hinges, raised the tower, destroyed its foundation, defecated on the rubble, and then left the door on top of the debris. All of this, of course, over the objections of our noble paladin who just wanted to rid the world of evil. The direction the campaign took did not allow the character to come back, but I'm still expecting some GM retribution in a future game for that one. Totally worth it. My first campaign was with some twisted but hilarious friends. We had a couple of people with really high charisma and used the local townsfolk in unspeakable but efficient ways. At one point, we were accompanied by a local dwarven smith, with a martial past of some sort, and we needed to explore a creepy cathedral. Having heard some horrible skittering coming from the entrance, none of us wanted to go first, so we got the dwarf drunk and spoke of glory to be won in leading a courageous charge. Not content to simply scout, we also managed to hide several bottles of highly flammable liquid on him, for after the great victory, and poured a drink over him for luck. When he made his brave and glorious charge, a fire arrow in the back turned him into a rather unwilling bomb, and cleared out a nasty nest of spiders that lay in wait. Our paladin was lawful good, but also hopelessly gullible, and went along with our depraved deeds without complaint. Our second and more horrible transgression was just soon after this fiery escapade, when we used a local boy who had been helping us to find his friend as a fishing lure to draw out the queen spider from a pit that looked like certain death to enter. We all set up with bows and some large pieces of rubble at the mouth of the hole, lowered in the poor hapless fellow and dropped everything we had on the spider queen when she came to claim the morsel. Unfortunately, we were only able to recover the bottom half of the lad, but our entirely amoral and lecherous druid declared, "Well, at least we've got the good half." The druid and I were the Oakenrod brothers, an incestuous pair that used every opportunity to slip in references to our somewhat deviant ways. As we found out later, our dearly departed dwarf actually had quite the kinky dungeon beneath his house, and we were sure to make proper use of the facilities for our raucous lovemaking as soon as the group left us alone in the house. I think the DM left that day a little stunned by what he had witnessed. This isn't quite the most murder hobo-y group of murder hobos to ever murder hobo, but it sure sits in the upper quartile of them. They still don't compare to the games I ran for kids, who were on a remarkable level when it came to lacking morality, although they didn't do quite so much adult stuff with each other. My players were trying to get a free room with a Thieves Guild password discount. The rogue knew the password because she'd infiltrated the guild, but when the group was asked the password, the rogue refused to tell them. The other two party members panicked and said super confidently, "Dip, dip, potato chip." Laughing my butt off, I decided that was worth 50% off the room, so the guild let them in. Starting a new campaign with new characters, my buddy decided to play as a Goliath paladin. Our characters were meeting at a tavern for a job. He decided that instead of walking through the door, he was going to kick it down. Fails the strength check with a +4. Twice. After being thoroughly humiliated and teeing off the barkeep by cracking the door frame, he tries to enter the door normally. Our DM has him roll dexterity because he's like 10 feet tall. Natural 1. He smacks his head on the top of the door frame and passes out. My party was en route to an island off the mainland that held a quest we needed to handle. On the ride, our DM decided to have us roll history to see if we knew anything about the island. 2 of us critically failed. My character no longer believed the island existed and was sure we would fall through the island when it finally came into view. Our bard believed it was full of big-chested Goliath girls. Another time, our DM had us roll for dreams. I critically failed, and our Goliath rolled a natural 20. His dreams invaded my own, and I had to sleep to him engaging in night-long festivities with other big-chested Goliath girls. The next day, I rolled pretty low on a charisma check at the blacksmith, and my character randomly yelled, "I see Goliath wangs in my dreams!" Good times. So far, all we've done was make our characters and a few scenes, but it was so fun coming up with random names that weren't so random, like Parry Hotter and Rilo Ken. Alcohol and lots of Monty Python references were involved. First time I played D&D, I played a chaotic knight. My character would do the most random crap possible, and the rest of the group thought it was ridiculous. One of the quests is to explore a cave, and before we explore it, the entire group rested up outside the cave, and one person takes watch. My character decides that he isn't going to watch over the group and goes to the entrance of the cave and digs a giant hole and covers it, then comes back to the camp. Everyone that I was playing with was literally thinking, what the frick? So, long story short, we explore the cave, kill all the people, and almost defeat the main bad guy. But the DM decides that the bad guy flees from the cave, and I remind the DM that I want to roll for the bad guy to fall in the ditch and die. I roll a natural 20, and the bad guy falls into the hole and dies. The DM is teed off. Everyone in the group is dying of laughter because my character's idiotic nature saved the quest. In Pathfinder, there's the time I started a prison riot with nothing but the message spell and some good bluff rolls. So we were planning to break the whole party out of prison, and to do that we needed to distract the guards. My character, a catfolk sorcerer with the Rakshasa bloodline, gets the bright idea to get the prisoners fighting among themselves. One of the powers of the Rakshasa bloodline that's available at creation is the ability to give yourself a +5 bonus on bluff checks a number of times a day equal to 3 plus your charisma modifier. This character's modifier was +4, so it could be used a total of 7 times a day. Bluff is a class skill for a sorcerer, and we were playing at first level, so I had a rank in it for a total of 8 points in it. But I was also using the Clever Cat racial feature, which gives a +2 to bluff, diplomacy, and sense motive. A total of +10. So all in all, up to 7 times a day, I could roll bluff with a +15 bonus at first level. Now, with that context established, this prison had anti-magic crystals in it because the dwarfs running it aren't stupid, but I managed to make all of my rolls to successfully cast my spells through the anti-magic. I start imitating the voices of people using the message spell. Message isn't telepathic, it produces an audible sound which seems like a whisper to anyone who isn't directly intended for. So, people are looking at each other like, "What the frick did you just say to him?" because they think they hear a dwarf mumble something rude about how small a minotaur is in their area. Soon, chaos breaks out and I'm just standing in the mess hall, looking innocent while the rest of the party tries to grab gear and take out the guards. It was hilarious and it made me fall in love with the character. Our party had been temporarily deputized so we could help catch some criminals. We got these little badges we could flash to get access to parts of the city we shouldn't have been able to go. Our rogue, being a typical rogue, decided he wanted to rob a particularly hefty-looking coin purse from someone at a tavern. He manages to hand the bag off to someone else in our party, but he's cornered by the private security of the person he stole it from. We picked a bad target. This person was important. Thinking quickly, my bard grabs our rogue, wrestles him to the ground, and flashes his badge. I convince them I'm an undercover cop and we've been tailing this guy. I proceed to arrest our rogue and contact the real police to come handle the search for the stolen purse. Our party ties the rogue up, drags him out of the tavern, and skips town with a purse full of diamonds before the real police get there. We could have chatted this person up, learned they were a famous jewel dealer, and gone on some big quest to help them in exchange for riches, but instead we Ocean's 11'd that crap and we were never heard from again. Have you ever witnessed a birth that was clearly a result of a cheating spouse? It wasn't at the birth, but I used to work for a urologist who did vasectomies. He did a vasectomy on a guy, then did the requisite 3-month and 6-month fertility follow-up test to make sure it worked. The 6-month test showed no sperm, so the guy was all set to not father children. Fast forward 2 years and he calls my surgeon fuming, ranting and raving about how they messed up the vasectomy and now his wife is pregnant. So Doc orders another fertility analysis. Of course, it comes back totally negative. A very awkward conversation ensued in the exam room that I'd have paid anything to eavesdrop on. The best part is, the couple left the office teed off, with the wife sticking to her story that she would never cheat on her husband, and the husband in complete denial that she'd ever lie about that. Last I heard, they were gearing up to sue or something, but I don't work there anymore, so I don't know what happened. Not 100% sure how those tests go, but I just laughed out loud at the thought of some dude angrily tugging away like, "Not my kid, I'll show you." These stories remind me of something I experienced firsthand the day after my son was born. Nurse: "So, your baby's blood type is A negative. Wife: "Like me." Nurse: "And daddy?" Me: No, I'm an A+. Nurse: "You must be mistaken, that combination isn't possible. I'll leave you guys to it." Me: pulls out phone and frantically Googles baby blood type combinations. Disclosure: the nurse was wrong. Props for checking first before attacking your wife. Yep, that's why he checked first, but if he attacked her straight away like some guys in these stories, they'd have one hell of a marriage to repair afterwards. A patient asked if both possible fathers could be in her C-section so that neither would miss the birth of his child. They'd figure out the details later. After a lot of careful consideration, because it did seem like a semi-reasonable plan, the answer was no because it was too easy to imagine many scenarios in which a fight might break out in the OR and instruments go flying. Also, there's a pretty strict rule about only one person allowed with the patient in the OR. In the end, she brought her mum. You know what? Out of all the outcomes here, I think they definitely settled on the most sensible one. Possibly the only sensible decision leading up to that baby, who knows? We don't know the full story. A friend of mine went through it. He went down a dark path of substances and we'd lost touch after a big fight about how he was messed up all the time and he was wasting his life. He contacted me out of the blue to say that I was right. He needed to step up and be responsible, and that he'd quit everything cold turkey because he was going to be a dad. Apparently, he was going to help his girl get sober and they were going to have this kid and get married. He really got his crap together over the course of the pregnancy. He was clean, got a job, and got a nice place to live. She was not so dedicated. She continued to use all kinds of substances throughout the pregnancy. She ended up going into labor early at 26 weeks. She gave birth to a premature, addicted baby boy. He went directly into the NICU. She stayed at the hospital and visited the NICU until she was released. She then disappeared. She never visited the baby, never called to check on it, didn't go home, just fell off the face of the planet. He, however, spent every spare second at the NICU with that baby. However, as the weeks passed, it became pretty obvious that the baby wasn't his, as skin tone evened out and hair came in. Chick was blonde with blue eyes. My friend is super pale blonde with blue eyes as well. The baby was clearly half Hispanic. He wanted to adopt the baby, but they wouldn't let him. The state took it and it went into foster care. It totally messed him up for a long time. He relapsed for a while and got into a bad car accident. He spent some time in the hospital and then got everything back together. He's married now to a really nice girl and rapidly had 4 kids that are his with another currently on the way. Isn't that just the worst thing? What was so different about him than any other potential adoptive parents? At least he'd been there the whole time. At least he cared. Did they really think putting the baby into a convoluted foster system was the best thing for him? Glad the dude's doing well, though. Probably his history with addiction, which may have come with some legal troubles, which worsens the situation in the eyes of CPS. When I was born, my father was 100% certain that I was not his because his blood type and my mum's blood type couldn't have produced me. He punched a hole in the wall in the hospital and yelled at my mum refusing to sign the birth certificate because I have A positive blood. My mum has 0 negative and he was positive that he had AB negative because that's what his brand new dog tag said. He was in the army at the time. Turns out they'd misprinted his dog tags. All his old tags said A positive. In conclusion, a typo on my dad's army-issued dog tags almost caused my parents to divorce. To be fair, a misprint like that could kill him in other ways. But it's absolutely possible for an O negative and an AB negative parent to have an A negative baby. Like the only 2 blood types that couple could produce are A negative and B negative? Do you mean you've got an A positive blood type? I'm not a doctor, but when my godson was born, the nurse told us about this guy who had gotten 2 girls pregnant at the same time. They both wound up in the hospital just down the hall from each other, giving birth hours apart. What a lucky guy. When my mother was giving birth to my little sister, my paternal aunt was also giving birth to my cousin in the same hospital. My dad was back and forth between the 2 rooms often enough to get some looks from the hospital staff. Funny story that reminds me of this. My husband, then boyfriend, was in the process of getting divorced when I found out I was pregnant. His soon-to-be ex-wife found out a month later she was also pregnant from a guy she'd had a one-night stand with, not my husband. Prior to this, she was refusing to sign divorce papers because she hoped to reconcile even if he did have a pregnant girlfriend. Obviously, it wouldn't work out since she got knocked up by another guy, so she finally signed them. The similar part is that our due dates were 11 days apart. We had the same obstetrician and were set to deliver at the same hospital. My company switched insurances a week before I was due, and I got to pick a different hospital. Wouldn't you know it, we went into labor hours apart and delivered on the same day. Our obstetrician had to deliver my son first and then run across town to deliver her son. The OB did a double take when he saw my ex's family show up to visit her late after visiting us. They were the, "He may have divorced her, but we didn't" mind. His sister even stayed when she delivered to be her support buddy, even though she was officially with the one-night stand guy and his family was there. Our OB told us that may have been the most Jerry Springer thing she'd seen in a while. My friend was the delivery nurse for the hospital that all high-risk pregnancies go to. They're extremely busy and she's brought a lot of people into the world. She once delivered a baby in the parking lot by herself. This has come up on a weekly basis, but she shared the best story with us. A Caucasian couple come in and the mother is in labor. When the dude is filling out paperwork, the mother takes the doctor aside. She tells him there is a chance that the baby may be a different race than the father and to let her know as soon as the baby is born. The baby is born. The doctor turns to the mother and announces loudly, "Congratulations on your white baby boy." Well, this is fun. My wife's cousin, third, came out black. She's married to the pastiest Irish guy you can find. Their marriage didn't end, but this has created an interesting story. Grandma tells everyone that he is really just Native American. Her husband was half Native. He's now 15 and still no one in the family will admit that he's black. One of my colleagues in anesthesia once placed an epidural in a heavily tattooed lady. Apparently she had Steve's lunchbox tattooed above her hoo-ha. She gave birth. The OB-GYN turned to the father in the room and said, "Congratulations, Steve." The guy stated, "My name isn't Steve." No meltdowns or anything, just an awkward moment. That is brilliant. Also, what a tattoo to commit to. Clearly some misplaced faith in the longevity of a former partner's relationship. That'll be a painful one to remove. My mum is a labor and delivery nurse. One time she had a patient whose parents were present during her stay at the hospital. The staff there have a whiteboard with some general information about the patients like blood type, time spent in the wing, and like how far along. This information is nameless for IDOWorkHereLady reasons and instead has a patient's number. So this patient happened to be the only one in the wing at the time. Her father was walking back from the cafeteria at one point and noticed the board. He stopped one of the nurses and asked if the blood type for the patient on the board was correct. He knew his daughter was the only patient there. It was B positive. The nurse confirmed it was correct. Turns out he knew his and his wife's blood type. He was O positive and his wife was A negative. The combination will never yield a B-positive baby. He brings his wife out and just points to the board, and this look of shock washes over her. In conclusion, father of patient in labor finds out his wife cuckolded him 25 years later by knowing his blood type Punnett squares. Did he draw the squares in the whiteboard? I would have totally done that. Funny story, I ran a lab in college, and we were teaching the kids about blood types. Kid insists that his parents were a certain type of blood and that his square had to be wrong. Came to find out he was adopted and had just found out through basic bio. Poor kid. I'm white and my wife is black. I'm a frog belly fluorescent white, think ginger light. My wife is earthy brown. No one would ever describe her as light-skinned. We have a daughter. She had a difficult labor and our daughter was delivered via C-section. She did not really get to see our daughter immediately after delivery. Later in our room she was dozing and they brought our daughter in. My relatives and my wife's relatives all commented on how my daughter looked so much like me and was not even close to the pigmentation of my wife. So I carried my daughter over to my wife and gently woke her and showed her our daughter, and said, "I don't think she's yours." We all had a good laugh. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. My friend told me this story of hers. Woman and her husband were having their first child and it was the friend's first ever delivery, OB-GYN. When she got the baby out, she looked at it, then looked at the parents and asked, "Okay, which of you has 6 fingers?" The mother broke down crying, yelling "I'm sorry" to the husband. Their neighbor apparently has 6 fingers. Did the father begin a lifelong quest to bring the 6-fingered man to justice? That is inconceivable. When my wife was born, she was very yellow and the nurse quietly asked her mum about the paternity when the dad was out of the room. She was just born with a bad case of jaundice and that nurse was an idiot. My husband is half Mexican and I'm of Native American ancestry. We both look pretty white though. When our son was born, he had plenty of the blackest hair and looked very yellow. They kept saying he was jaundiced, he was in the NICU for other reasons, but the tests didn't show elevated bilirubin. We kept asking when he could leave the NICU room with us as his condition improved. But 2 of the nurses kept insisting that he was also jaundiced and that they'd need to clear that first as my milk came in or through supplementation, using it like a threat to get me to supplement. Finally, my husband said, "He's not jaundiced, he's Mexican, damn it," and left the room. It was first time I laughed out loud in 5 days. The nurse was so flustered. My best friend's stepbrother was that guy who found out he wasn't the father because the baby was black. I'll try to make it short. Dude had gone to rehab twice and was doing really well. He came back home for a weekend and screwed his ex-girlfriend. Left and went back to his home state to continue his newfound life. Got the call that she was pregnant and dropped everything to come back and be a father. We were really worried he would relapse, but he was great. So 9 months of preparation goes by, he was going to be an awesome dad. All worries about relapsing were gone and he seemed ready to become the best dad he could ever be. Baby comes out, everyone's happy. Nurse takes him aside and after a few minutes says, "I want to ask you something. You do know that's not your kid, right?" He says, "What do you mean?" "Well, that baby is at least half black, but the pigments are probably going to really darken." So he goes over to his ex-girlfriend and asks if there's any way what the nurse told him is true. She starts sobbing and breaks down completely. Admits that she screwed someone else right around the time he came back. So he says, "All right, I'm glad you and the baby are healthy. Have a nice life." Walks into the waiting room where all the grandparents are waiting. Cheers, celebration. "Everything good?" "Yep, healthy baby, healthy mom. I'm not the father. I'm out of here." And walked right out the freaking door. The girl's parents even wanted him to pay and support. He moved back to where he got his life back together and is doing incredibly well. But man, I wish he had all that time back. At least he only wasted 9 months. If she had banged a white guy, they might not have noticed for 18 years. This is clearly an incredibly complex and nuanced problem. She was single and clearly shouldn't be judged for behaving as such, but maybe be upfront about seeing other people around the same time? Or with hindsight being 20/20, use protection. This story sucks for everyone involved. This one's about my mum. She had my brother when she was only about 16 and had a very hard birth with him. Back in that time, the husband wasn't allowed in the labor room and my grandma was at work. When my brother was born, he got stuck, so they had to use forceps and he was also jaundiced, so he looked like an Asian baby. My grandma turns up after work and is looking at all the babies in the room where they were kept and asks which one was her daughter's baby. The nurse points to my brother and him looking all Asian. My grandma storms up to my mum in the ward and said, "Which Asian guy did you sleep with?" Well, my mum thought she was joking, so she said, "I don't know, it was too dark to see." My grandma then proceeded to hit my mother until a nurse came in and explained. My brother is now 44 and as white can be. So I'm an NICU nurse that was floating to the nursery. A baby was born with a specific genetic abnormality. He had one missing limb, but was otherwise doing fine. The pediatrician was in the parents' room discussing with them the follow-up type stuff for the baby, appointments with a geneticist, an orthopedic surgeon, etc. At some point in the conversation, the mother asked what the baby's blood type was, to which the pediatrician responded with A positive. The father of the baby insisted that was impossible, as he and his wife, this was their third baby, were both O negative. The pediatrician got totally flustered and came back to the nursery to verify the lab's results. The baby really was A positive. We even went so far as to redraw the baby's blood and retest it. Nope, A positive. There is absolutely no chance that the baby belonged to that man. The husband left the hospital soon after and didn't show up again until it was time to pick up the mum and the baby to bring them home. The mum spent the rest of the hospital stay lying alone in the dark, mostly hiding under the covers. My aunt is white and so was her husband. He passed a while ago. When they finally had a kid, my cousin was black. The family decided to ignore it, my uncle included. This was 1989, and to gain my young teen cooperation, I got an early Christmas gift, a Sega Genesis. Love my cousin. Not me, but this was an odd one that I heard because I casually knew one of the parents. The father, to be exact. He came in freaking out because his wife had a kid. Well, he was white, she was white. The kid was born with a very dark skin tone. He instantly dumps her and starts filing for divorce. She has no idea what the heck happened. She forces a DNA test on him before she'll do anything. 3 months later, well, turned out it was his kid. Her parents, his parents, everyone, think he is a butthead. His mother apparently had a black grandmother. So the genes came through extra strong somehow in their kids so many generations down the line. Safe to say they're going through a heck of a lot of therapy. She never cheated on him and he never believed her despite all her serious protests. Been about a year now and it's better but still not perfect. This happened to my brother's friend. His mother didn't tell him his father was black, so he grew up believing he was white. He got his girlfriend pregnant and the baby came out looking more black than he did. He stormed out, broke up with her, and kicked her out. After that, he confided in his mother about the situation, and that's when she broke the news to him. He felt like a butt and a half. She took him back, but he had to work for it. She was, of course, hurt by his accusations. But as far as I know, they're still together. My dad was a doctor and he never told me about any meltdowns, but he told me they would deliver a lot of babies for unprepared parents. Teenagers, mums and dads with obvious substance or alcohol problems, legal problems, etc., generally not ready to raise a kid. For every one of those risky couples, it was usually teen parents who were 16 or 17, he would take a picture of the new mom and dad together holding the baby a couple of hours after the birth. Then a few weeks later, he would send the picture to them with a short note about how they'll make great parents and the baby is counting on them and just inspiring words in general. He has a whole photo album of the new mums and dads holding their baby in the delivery room when he was a doctor. And I have to say, it is some outstanding photography. Amazing stuff. And to tie these stories off with something a bit more heartwarming, let's have a nice long saga from small-town Illinois. I heard this from an old client who was an obstetrician. He was telling me stories about when he used to deliver babies at people's homes way back in the day. This was probably 15 years ago when he told me this story, and he was in his 80s. 83, if I recall correctly. Anyway, he was telling me about his son, and I asked if he delivered his own son. He said yes, and told me the most amazing, heartbreaking, and heartwarming story. In the late 1940s, the town ambulance/hearse/taxi pulls up at his little independent practice out in the boonies of Illinois. A volunteer firefighter comes in and says they have a lady in labor and they won't make it to the hospital, which is over an hour away. He tells them to bring her in. He delivers the baby and mum passes out. They clean her up, they clean up the baby. All seems normal. The mum wakes up and the doctor comes in to give her the baby. She starts screaming, "Get it away from me!" He's all confused and can't figure out what's going on. She keeps flailing around and screaming that she doesn't want to look at it. The doc takes the baby out back and comes back. She's calmer but still looks frantic and terrified. He talks to her and she just stares at him like he's got 9 heads. He finally asks, "Well, what do you want me to do with your son?" The mum stays silent for a long time, and as he's getting up to leave, she quietly says, "Can you get rid of him?" The doc asks what she means. She says, "You know, just make him maybe go to sleep so he won't wake up." He said it took everything for him not to beat this woman to death right there and then. He went off on a tangent about how much he loved his work, working with all the new mothers in these little towns full of salt-of-the-earth people with great family values. On and on about how happy it made him bringing life into the world, and this woman wanted him to murder her baby. He asked why, and she ended up saying that her husband is in the military and it's not his baby. She couldn't let him find out. He kind of understood her rationale for not letting her husband know, but murder? So he suggested family, an orphanage, and other options back then, none of which seemed appealing in my mind. She said no to all of them because she couldn't risk this coming back to haunt me. He told her he'd see what he could do, and he let her rest. The next day, he tried talking to her again, and she was just more adamant about making it sleep. She said she wanted to hold her baby. He refused since he thought she'd try to kill him herself. She went nuts. In the end, he sent her home and told her that he had given the baby to his brother, who was a pastor and was unable to have children. He promised he'd never tell anyone, even the kid, who she was. Then he said he taught her a lesson. If she ever found herself pregnant again, she would come to him whether it was her husband's or not. If he ever found out she went elsewhere, he'd tell everyone the story. He said he did this because he was afraid she'd get knocked up and kill the next one. And he knew he'd find out if she went elsewhere because he was the only baby doctor for 5 towns around and knew other doctors at the hospitals. Of course, she could have delivered at home on her own, now that I think about it. She never had any other kids as far as the doc knew. And he said he did check up on her once or twice with his colleagues. Supposedly she died from a substance overdose a few years later. The doctor and his wife raised that baby as their own son. His wife wasn't able to have kids. The pastor brother was just BS, and it was to make her think he'd already given the baby away. He eventually told his son a very watered-down version of the story when the kid was older. The kid ended up becoming a plastic surgeon and has like 9 kids of his own. He's doing very well, he's very happy, and he probably would have never had a shot had that small-town fireman tried to press on to the hospital and wound up delivering the kid in the middle of nowhere. He was convinced she would have delivered and then smothered the baby by the time they got to the hospital. In conclusion, lady gets pregnant by another man. Her husband has no idea because he's in the military. She ends up at a small-town doctor and wants the doc to kill the baby so her husband doesn't find out. Doc raises the baby with his barren wife, and the baby grows up to be a brilliant surgeon who gives the doc tons of grandkids and a huge family he never would have had otherwise. Was your hangout with a celebrity better or worse than expected? Absolute best experience of my life. I ended up running over Bruce Willis. If you ever get a Make-A-Wish, ask to meet Kevin Smith. I was a bald, chemo-y freaking mess. My dad contacted Make-A-Wish. They came out and asked me what I wanted. I said, him. And within a week, our tickets were bought for us and our trip was planned. Usually takes weeks or months for celebrities to get back to Make-A-Wish. Kevin had whisked us out to New York to meet him on the set of Cop Out, which was then called a different name. He met me with the biggest bear hug of my life, and he was the nicest, sweetest, most genuine celebrity I could ever imagine. I spent the entire day on set, met Tracy Morgan, Bruce Willis, manhandled all of the equipment they would let me touch, and in the middle of it all, Kevin says, "Hey, you want to be in the movie?"
Yeah, I want to be in the movie.
Okay, I'm going to have you run over Bruce Willis.
Thanks, Kevin Smith.
So if you watch Cop Out, I'm the student driver that runs over Bruce under the L train. At the end of it all, he invited us back to his penthouse overlooking the Statue of Liberty and let us see the rough cut of Cop Out. I spent all day and night with him. My life has been miserable in comparison ever since. When I was about 12, my mum won backstage passes to Huey Lewis and the News. I met Huey Lewis and then we got to sit in the front seats. He routinely pointed and sang at us throughout the show. Unfortunately, this was 2004, so I was surrounded by middle-aged women screaming at him. He was a nice dude, even though my mum told him I sang one of his songs as a little kid and named a song that wasn't his, as we learned a couple of months ago. He just went along with it. My father-in-law got in an elevator at a convention. Huey Lewis was in it. My father-in-law says, "Oh wow, you're Huey Lewis." Huey Lewis responds, "Oh wow, you're Doug last name." Father-in-law is in shock and asks how he knows his name. Huey Lewis then points to the convention name tag my father-in-law is wearing. When I was like 4 or so, I won a contest to have lunch with Lou Ferrigno. This was in the late 70s or early 80s when The Incredible Hulk was running, and I was a huge fan, so I guess I was totally disappointed to find out that his skin wasn't really green. I also remember that we had funnel cake. Yum. About 5 years ago, I won a competition to spend the day with Hugh Jackman on the set of Baz Luhrmann's Australia. Was the nicest, most sincere guy. Never forgot my name and introduced me to everyone. Total legend.
He's one of the few actors you could never convince me was a crappy person.
I saw a video of him recognizing a reporter at an event as a student of his from when he used to be a teacher. He seemed so happy about it. Yep, Hugh Jackman seems like an absolute delight from what I've seen. It takes a guy with a good, humble sense of humor to engage in that kind of joke rivalry with Ryan Reynolds and look like that much of a jerk. Won a contest a couple of months ago to see a private Cage the Elephant show, and got to chat with them for a bit afterwards. Really cool, funny guys. Gave me a shout out later that night during their actual show. The private concert was pretty awkward though. In 2009, I entered a vitamin water contest to meet Adrian Peterson just for the heck of it. I ended up winning. I got to talk to him for a solid 2 hours, then watched a movie with him. I got to bring my dad with me, and we both had a fantastic time. He's my dad's favorite player, and he nearly broke both of our wrists with his handshake. I also got an autographed jersey that I got framed. He was extremely pleasant and seemed genuinely glad to be there. Oh, and I got a year's supply of vitamin water, which was pretty sweet. Ever since that experience, I've entered every contest I've come across. When I was 10, my dad took me to a Kiss concert. Poison opened up for them, and we got to go backstage. It was kind of cool seeing all these huge guys with long hair that I had no clue who they were. Gene picked me up and called me handsome. That's all I really remember about it, though. I met Richard Simmons at Walgreens. It went exactly as you'd imagine meeting Richard Simmons at Walgreens would go.
I met Richard Simmons at the Gap in Santa Monica. I was buying a gray shirt and he comes up to me and starts going on and on about how gray is a bad color on me and I must wear purple. The color of royalty and passion. He was outrageous and exactly like he is on TV. He then walked around and picked out some purple shirts, went up to the counter, and had some woman, his assistant I assume, buy them for me. He kept asking me if I was single or in love. I'm a dude with a girlfriend. In conclusion, Richard Simmons bought me some purple t-shirts from the Gap. I nearly forgot his best line. When I was like, "Are you sure?" to buying me the shirts, he responded, "Don't worry, honey, I made a lot of money on my CDs."
Well, I won a contest with Radio Disney to see a Seattle Sonics game with the band, Jump 5. I was 10 or so at the time, and it was pretty freaking cool, not so much to brag about now. A friend of mine got to meet Roger Bumpus, Squidward from SpongeBob, and overheard him curse. My friend said, "Squidward, you said a bad word." Roger turned to him, looked him in the eye, and said,
"The frick I did."
He then chatted for about 30 minutes and took a picture.
Those are sentence enhancers.
In high school, 2000 or so, I won a contest where you got to have dinner and meet Kane, the wrestler. We didn't really eat with him since he wore a mask, we sort of ate in the room with him there. He got a bunch of food to go and presumably ate it on his way to the next destination. The character of Kane didn't really talk, so there wasn't much interaction besides a handshake and a photo. It wasn't a bad experience, but I kind of thought there would be more to it. 2 months ago, in December 11th, it was the first Foo Fighters concert in Mexico, and just a couple of days before I happened to win a meet and greet with the band. I was so excited to meet my favorite band. All the band members are so awesome to hang out with, although the meet and greet is only like 10 minutes. I was able to chat with every member of the band, take a pic with all of them, except for Taylor.
Pat gifted me one of his guitar picks, the band signed me a vinyl, and Dave Grohl took a selfie with me. It was one of my best days ever. I met Hanson by winning a drawing thing they do for their fan club after most shows. I've been a huge fan since I was 12. The three of them arrived looking rather glazed over, shook our hands and took pictures without asking us our names, or saying anything other than a polite greeting, and went on their merry way. Polite but impersonal. You could definitely tell that they'd been through the motions too many times. My mum won a radio contest to hang out with Ludacris, and I got to tag along. It was pretty cool, he's an awesome guy. He had complaints about whoever thought it was necessary to tell the caterers to bring so much chicken. He just talked about what his life was like and what it's like now. He learned everyone's name and signed a ton of stuff. Didn't get to spend as much time with the band though, just a meet and greet, a few questions and a quick show. It was fun, the band is awesome. Also, they love to have fans come up and sing with them, which is one of the coolest things I've seen a band do in a while. In 2001, I won a trip to Hollywood and a meet and greet with Jennifer Tilly. She was an absolute peach. Friendly, bubbly, personable, gorgeous. Everyone was telling how much they enjoyed her in Bullets Over Broadway. I was the only one who told her that I loved her in Bride of Chucky. She giggled and told me that was her favorite too. I've loved her ever since. That's sweet. I imagine doing a schlocky horror film would be tons more fun than most other productions anyway. Awesome. When I was maybe 12 to 13 years old, there was a contest on the radio to win a free lunch with Buzz Aldrin. First successful trip to the moon and the second guy to step foot on the moon. Apollo 11. At a Planet Hollywoods, or some similar themed restaurant. The question on the radio was simple. Name the 3 men in the Apollo 11 missions. My mum, who was driving me to basketball practice, swore the third guy was named Shepard or some other name. But I, a kid who was into space for a bit, knew that it was Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins. My mother pulled the car over, called in, got through, and used my answer instead of hers. We won. I got to skip school to go to the restaurant and get a free lunch. I barely got to meet Buzz Aldrin though, and this was probably around 1997 to 1998-ish, so Buzz was in his mid to late 60s. He had a table set up, and he was signing autographs. I bought an original Apollo 11 poster my mum had saved away in the closet. Totally forgot how or why she had a vintage 8x10 glossy prints of all the astronauts and a super cool metallic print poster. But basically, I said hello to an old man, told him I knew the answer to a radio show, got some things signed and a photo was taken. Then I sat down and ate a burger with my mum. Pretty but hey, I got to skip school. In conclusion, won a radio contest with Buzz Aldrin of Apollo 11. I was pretty young and I didn't care. A couple of years ago, I did a science history project on what was going on at NASA ever since we landed on the moon. Well, one of the bits I was excited about was the trip to the moon to bring back a whole bunch of samples. Harrison Schmitt was the first and last pure scientist to go to the moon. Most of them are pilots and ex-military. He was a geologist, to be exact. He brought back 218, I think, pounds of moon rock, including helium-3. I called him for a project, but I kept getting his personal aide. She said she would have him call me back ASAP, but I didn't get a call for a week. Then I called like 3 times in a row, and I hear a little old guy on the other side of the phone introduce himself. I talked to him for like 45 minutes, shaking the whole time. I asked him questions like, how did he regulate body temperature? He said, the sun actually made it get quite hot inside the suits while they were digging for rocks, so they had what he described to be liquid long johns. Asked him about his work with helium-3 and nuclear fusion, and he said no one's excited about science anymore, so there's not as much funding as there needs to be. Last, the cheesy question of, what does weightlessness feel like? And he replied that it felt like never coming back down while jumping on a trampoline. I ramble, but he was a really nice guy. When I was 3, 1993-ish, my mum won tickets to go see the Wiggles at the Fremantle Town Hall. Anyway, once the show was over, me and my friend kept on dancing and playing in the hall while our mothers talked. We were only 4 left. As the Wiggles were leaving, they noticed us and played with me and my friend for about 20 minutes. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. My dad worked on Ninja Turtles 2: Secrets of the Ooze. I got to meet the Ninja Turtles, hold Leonardo's swords, and hang out on set in the junkyard scene with the Foot Clan. It was kind of a big deal. Just a little extra info, I also got to visit the laboratory that the ooze was housed in that the Foot Clan stole it from. Also, I've told this elsewhere, but it's one of my coolest memories I have. After visiting my dad on set, my mum and I have to go leave, and as we drive outside of one of the giant sound stages, there are 2 guys, a prop master and costume guy, machining something metal. Sparks are flying off this workbench. Hard to tell what it was at first. As we get closer, I realized that what I'm looking at is none other than Shredder's helmet. But not just Shredder's normal helmet, it's the helmet of Super Shredder. Helped install Tom Hanks' home office, computers, printers, etc. He was really nice, does that count? He gave the two of us cookies. Computers? Printers? I thought he only liked typewriters. They're not AOL compatible. A friend of mine had cancer back in 2nd grade. The Make-A-Wish Foundation set him up to go with a friend to meet Fallout Boy. I got to be that friend. We got front row tickets to one of their concerts and we got to go backstage and meet them. I don't remember a lot of it, but they were really cool dudes and gave him a signed guitar, so that was cool. In '96, I won a contest to meet Adrian Paul of Highlander. We chatted about nerdy stuff, and years later, when I had my firstborn child, he contacted me to give congratulations. I still to this day don't know how he had my number or knew we were expecting. Pretty cool all around. I won a contest for a meet and greet with Cascade, general admission floor tickets to his AmITheA show, and VIP tickets to his after-party. Cascade was great. He came on the tour bus after the show, and I was able to talk with him about his favorite tracks and how it was like to be a DJ as well as the past gigs he went to. He really loves his fans, and I was lucky to get an autograph and picture with him. Some other people weren't so lucky because of Cascade's time constraints. Overall, a pretty awesome night. I found out I won at 3 p.m. on the day of the show, so I was kind of ecstatic. I was in the middle of stressing out for a licensing exam I was studying for, so this was the perfect stress reliever. Not to mention, I only spent $20 the whole night. Back in 2009, a friend of mine got us backstage for 9 Inch Nails for a quick band meet and greet. Trent had been someone whose music got me through adolescence, so I was pretty amped to meet him. When it came time, I walked up, we did the standard, everyone pose for the photo, and afterwards I said, "This is random, but I've got to know, are you a Dig or Reddit guy?" He looked at me, and I'll never forget this. "Actually, dude, Kevin Rose is a good friend of mine. I'm definitely a Dig guy." Well, I'm the co-founder of Reddit." "Geez, I'm sorry, dude." I thanked him for the photo and walked away. It was still a great show, and things worked out okay in the end. The moral of that story, kids, is to never meet your idols. Back in 2009, Dig was our chief competitor. It wasn't a platform for communities, just a single community, but the social news part was similar enough that everyone called us competitors. For anyone wondering, the person writing this story is verified as the actual co-founder of Reddit, and I'm honestly just including him on here because I can't believe that his testimony came up in my scriptwriting process about meeting celebrities. When I was 15, Tweekend had just been released. I got one of the first copies, which had a contest to win tickets to Cyberfest. A huge concert, 5 stages or something, with backstage VIP passes to meet the Crystal Method. I won. I never win anything in my life. Never ever. My mom wouldn't let me go. I didn't have an appropriate person to go with and give me a ride, someone she was sure wasn't on substances, and she didn't want to chaperone me. Goodbye $200 tickets, goodbye. I still haven't forgiven her for that. That's fricked up. I could maybe understand couldn't chaperone, but didn't want to is not a good enough excuse for making your kid miss something that cool. I totally agree. I mean, I went to the Justin Bieber movie, for Christ's sake. My eardrums will never be the same. This guy's mom should have bit the bullet and just gone to the concert. I won a contest to see and hang out with Less Than Jake perform an acoustic guitar concert at a guitar store. They were extremely nice and even drove me to their concert that was later that night. I always remember that it was in November because we talked about Thanksgiving traditions and they each talked about how awesome certain foods their grandmas made were. When I was like 8 years old, I got a backstage pass to a 98 Degrees concert. The Baha Men were the opening act, and my dad and I got to hang out backstage with them for like an hour. They were the nicest dudes. My dad told them I liked to sing, so they let me sing My Heart Will Go On for them. Then they autographed a CD for me and gave me a shout-out at the concert. Never got to ask them who let the dogs out, though. Me and my cousin hung out with RuPaul once. He tricked some random guy into thinking he was an actual woman. It was pretty funny. I know we had pics, but I honestly can't find them anymore. Through a really convoluted connection, I was able to hang out backstage with The National, specifically with the drummer Brian Devendorf. He was extremely nice and went out of his way to pay attention to me and my friends. In retrospect, I feel bad because he seemed exhausted after playing a hell of a show. But he was still so intent on being sociable with us rather than just zoning out and having some beers, which probably would have been 1,000 times more appealing. He told a cool story about jamming with Bruce Springsteen, and then said he felt awkward about telling the story, as if I would think he was bragging about being a rock star. I think everyone involved was just interacting on a weird self-conscious level, which reached its apex when my friend, who was super drunk, asked him, "So what do you do exactly?" Having just watched the entire show and spent a good 20 minutes with the guy, we politely excused ourselves and let him move on with his evening almost immediately after that. When I had cancer, my aunt asked me who I wanted to meet that was famous. I asked for Rick Mercer. 4 days later, he was on my couch drinking an Alexander Keith's. We ended up exchanging numbers, and we have been friends ever since. He even got me and Alex Lifeson of Rush to become friends. Not the exact type of answer you're looking for, but better than a friend of a friend met. Ooh, I've got one. When I was real young, my dad and me went to go meet Robert Englund. He was signing autographs and he was saying it was always nice to meet his fans when my dad said, "My sister-in-law is terrified of you." Englund responded, "Is she home? Do you have her number?" Robert Englund, my dad and I went over to a payphone where he dialed the number and waited for her to pick up. My aunt said, "Hello?" Robert Englund, as Freddy frickin' Krueger, "Is this the sister-in-law?" "Yes, who is this?" "I'll be seeing you in your dreams tonight." Then he hangs the frick up while cackling like a madman. So yes, sometimes meeting your heroes is as awesome as you would expect. Once I won VIP tickets and a meet and greet to go meet the Dirty Heads. I arrived, did the usual pictures with the group, and then we went on the tour bus to hang out before the show. Absolutely the most boring people I've ever met. I'm sure it's because they were on Green Herb, but 2 of them laid down for a nap and the rest were just smoking and chatting amongst themselves. I ended up just chatting with the tour manager. I would have rather just stayed inside the venue and met people there rather than the band. Glad it wasn't for the entire day. Maybe 15 years or so ago, my friends and I went to a horror convention in New York. One of the featured guests was Tom Savini. At the time, my friend Tony was super into horror makeup and a big horror movie buff, as all of my friends were. At any rate, I guess none of us knew Tom was going to be there. So when Tony found out, he got wet his pants excited about it. I've never been the starstruck kind, so I was sort of weirded out by his behavior, but figured he'd cool his jets when he finally got in line to meet the guy. Nope. Tony's steadily getting more and more visibly anxious and he keeps telling me, "Guy's my childhood hero, you know, man?" I get it, I've loved Savini too since I was a kid, but I guess Tony just got super stoked for meeting the guy or something. So we get to the front of the line and I shake Tom's hand and go, "I love your work, man, keep doing what you do." And I turn to Tony, expecting him to introduce himself, and Tony literally has his hands covering his mouth in that 7-year-old girl who just met a Disney princess at Disneyland pose. Except this is a burly, bearded 27-year-old wearing an Eraserhead t-shirt. We stand there for like 5 horrible seconds, and I kind of turn to Tom to say something on Tony's behalf, and I get about a quarter of the syllable out of my mouth before Tony blurts out, "Childhood hero!" and runs out of the conference room, leaving me standing there with a very bemused Tom Savini. I don't even remember how I recovered, I just think I said something along the lines of, "He's a really big fan of yours, thanks for your time," and walked with about as much dignity as I could muster. I didn't win anything, but I did make Steve Martin uncomfortable. My then-wife bought tickets to see him receive the Mark Twain Award for Comedy at the Kennedy Center. My wife and I had been out at a bar and I was finishing my gin and tonic. I ordered a second. As the bartender delivered it, the lights flashed. That's the indication that it's time to get seated. I tossed my gin and tonic down my throat and headed toward the ticket ripper lady. As she inspected our tickets, I asked, "I'm sorry, where's the closest men's room?" "Up the stairs and to your left." "Thank you." And I went up the stairs and turned to the right, because I'm an idiot. But I saw a sign that said men's room. Good enough for me. I headed for the door, I peed, flushed, and turned around and washed my hands. No paper towels, no regular towel, nothing. I'm in a suit. I can't exactly wipe my hands on my pants. I'm stuck. I finally just decide to leave my wet hands held in front of me like a surgeon freshly scrubbed for surgery, and I leave the men's room. And I find my wife telling Mr. Steve Martin, "No, I don't really get your comedy. We're here because my husband is a huge fan. Oh, here he is. Roman, Steve, Roman." I blurt out, "I really am a huge fan." And he sticks out his hand for a reluctant handshake. I stick my still dripping wet hand in his and shake vigorously. "Congratulations on the award, Mr. Martin. Sorry about the wet hand, I just peed. We should be getting to our seats. It was an honor to meet you." And with that, I let go of his hand, and my wife and I left for our seats on the exact opposite side of the balcony. Just before we rounded the corner, I looked back and saw Steve Martin standing beside his balcony door, looking at his wet hand. I knew what was going through his mind. I can't even wipe my hands on my pants. I'm wearing a stupid suit.
Reddit, what zero-tolerance school stories do you have? Make 'em juicy. My sister almost got suspended in the 3rd grade because my mom put a plastic butter knife in her lunch one day. I forget why she needed it for her lunch. One of the lunchroom aides spotted her using it and sent her right to the principal's office, and they called my mom to come in. This was 10 years ago. My cousin, 1 grade lower than me, got into a fight at school. Zero tolerance policy says they are both suspended. Attached to this policy is, if a student is involved in 3 separate fights within their time at the high school, then they were expelled. Within 2 weeks of my cousin returning, one of the guy's friends started a fight with my cousin. They are both suspended. A few weeks after he returns again, another friend of the original kid starts a fight with my cousin. In each situation, the other kid threw the first punch. Zero tolerance each time means it didn't matter. That is how children outsmarted the zero tolerance policy and why my cousin graduated from a private high school. When I was in year 10, grade 9 for Americans, we all had to line up to go into the dinner hall. For whatever reason, they put the menu with what they were serving that day at the front of the queue, so I walked to the front to read it. As I was walking back, a tiny year 8 kid shouted over to me, "Hey, stop trying to cut in the line, you jerkhead." I just told him to screw off and mind his own business, as it's the kind of school where, if it looks like you're giving in to a younger kid without fighting your corner, you won't hear the end of it. Then the little crap rugby tackled me, but he was too small to knock me over, so I just kind of stood there awkwardly as he tried to kick me. After a while, I'd had enough, so I grabbed him and picked him up, put him up against the wall where he was standing before, and turned to walk off. The headmaster was standing right in front of me, and he'd been watching the whole thing. We both got sent to the, quote, reflection room, which is like a higher form of detention. The only time I got in trouble was for trying to walk away from a fight started by someone half my size who I probably could have hurt if I wanted to. Thanks, headmaster. Now I know in the future that I should just deck the little bugger instead of being gentle, because the punishment is going to be the same anyway. In 9th grade, I was in a class that had some disruptive students that always caused problems for the teacher. During the semester, they were forced to sit at the desks nearest the teacher's desk. I wasn't a bad student at all, but for some reason, I was forced to sit in the front of them. I was mad. One day, we had a substitute, and my entire row gave the sub a very hard time. When the actual teacher came back, she forced everyone in my room to detention. Many other students protested for me, even the bad students in my row. She said, quote, "That's too bad." From that day forward, I helped the, quote, bad students to not get caught whenever they screwed with her. Not me, but my niece once had to do a school project about the Voyagers. We lived in a relevant area, in the computer lab. So she innocently typed in furtraders.com/org/net whatever. Of course, it was adult pictures. She got suspended. Left a BB gun in my friend's car in high school. Security saw it and he got kicked out. I talked to the principal, who was our friend and mentor, about reversing the decision or taking the punishment myself. He was just as upset as me, but he kept explaining that his hands were tied. He finally just looked me in the eye and said, "Zero tolerance." Actually, he used my name afterward, so I knew the conversation was over. My friend graduated from an alternative school. I once got suspended because a security guard found an unloaded airsoft pistol in the back of my truck. Let me be clear, by pistol, I mean those ones made of clear plastic, and by back of my truck, I mean behind the passenger seat of a crew cab with tinted rear windows. The security guard is really doing his job, eh? Making these suburban high schools safe for everyone. Also, I had a friend who got suspended for bringing a metal butter knife to school with his lunch. A knife is a knife, people. There could be no tolerance for weapons or logic and reasoning. 2 people got suspended for fighting off school property with each other. Also, not my school, but a local school, and it made the news. A girl with Down syndrome or an intellectual disability said a popular athlete touched or assaulted her in the library, and they made the girl write an apology letter to him, only to find out later he did do it, many times. When I was in 10th grade, I was eating dinner with my family, and my dad accidentally spills his beer all over my shirt. No big deal, so I go upstairs and take my shirt off for the night. The next day while I'm getting dressed, I see that I'm out of clean shirts to wear, so without thinking, I grab the shirt from last night and put it on, eat breakfast, and get out the door. The day was pretty normal, until I was called up to the front office. I wasn't really a bad kid or anything, so I wasn't too worried. Once I arrived, the principal informed me that another student told him that I smelled like beer and assumed that I had been drinking. I told the principal about what happened last night and assured him that I had not been drinking. He tells me that it still counts as bringing alcohol onto school grounds, and for that, I was suspended. TLDR, some people drink their alcohol, others wear it, but it is all the same in the eyes of the principal. We have a zero-tolerance, no-fighting rule in our gymnasium. Like, even if you lay down on your back while you're getting jumped, you'll still get expelled. Happened to get in a fight with a guy I could honestly beat down, but since I really didn't want any trouble with the school or at home, I just blocked my head until the principal came by. After a minute of discussion, he told me that I'd get suspended for 2 weeks, even when I told him that I didn't hit back. So I did what any teenager would have done, I think. I got loose from the principal and beat the other guy down and took my punishment. I won't tolerate you not being subscribed to Am I the Genius or Am I the Jerk either, linked in the description below, so you better subscribe, or else. My school had a zero-tolerance policy on cell phones and electronic items. Obviously, you can't convince a high schooler to not bring a phone with him or her, so the administrators would do, quote, raids occasionally and bust some phones each time. They didn't give it back until the end of the year. In high school, I got suspended for 1 week because I had a bottle of prescription painkillers in my locker. I was taking them because I got a serious knee injury while playing for the school baseball team. I also got kicked off the team and wasn't allowed to participate in any sports at school for the last 2.5 years of my high school education. The principal explained to me that they had a zero-tolerance policy to drugs of any kind. Worst part is, I could have went to at least 10 different lockers in school and shown him drugs in there, but he wouldn't let me because I shouldn't be, quote, snitching on my peers. Screw you, Principal Vickers. This one's a long one. After I'd beaten the original Half-Life, I started rooting around on the install CD and found out that they had included Worldcraft on the disc, so I installed it and gave it a shot. Mapping very quickly became a hobby of mine. As a result, I got very interested in architecture and geometry and started to take more notice of the way buildings were structured and laid out. I tried to get my friends into it, but I clearly took to it more than they did. But that was totally fine, since it meant I had a group of dedicated playtesters at my disposal. Anywho, I had mentioned something about the blocky, boxy design of our school, and that it would translate pretty easily into the grid-based, low-polygon world of Quake-based maps. I can already see where this is going. As a few of us were walking between classes, we talked a bit about it, pointing out how to model each shape, where we could cheat and optimize things, where we might need to do manual VIS leaf splits, and so on, but didn't make any plans to do anything. That evening, I went home and blocked out about a 15-foot squared area and abandoned the idea after a few hours because the school itself was architecturally boring and pretty tedious to work on. It's important to note that I didn't publicly release this work in progress. That must have been in the middle or end of a week. Fast forward to the next Monday, and my biology class is interrupted by 5 or 6 police armed with pistols. They entered through all 3 classroom doors at the exact same time and must have known the seating arrangement ahead of time because they instantly focused on me and moved in extremely quickly without breaking into a run. 1 took my backpack, at arm's length. 2 took me in that arm-twisting underarm hold thing where they kinda half-carry you. I was never cuffed. When we got outside, I saw at least 3 more, 1 with a shotgun, 2 more going through my locker. When we got to the administration building, I was led into a room in the back and kept there for pretty much the rest of the day and questioned on and off by various cops and guidance counselors/school psychologists. They wanted to know where I had hid my bombs, how many guns I had access to, if I had stashed extra ammunition anywhere, and reminded me repeatedly that if anyone had stumbled across one of the weapons I had hidden somewhere across the school, I'd be liable for anything that happened. They said on several occasions that they had enough to arrest me for conspiracy to commit murder and insisted that I just cooperate and give up my compatriots. Needless to say, I was scared and terribly confused. Apparently, over the weekend, the little discussion I had had with a few friends as we were walking through the halls had been overheard and grossly exaggerated. The idea to make a level had transformed into me already having a level of the school completed, placing entities such as doors had transformed into placing students everywhere, and doing it in the Half-Life engine apparently meant that I had built a massacre planning tool. What the police had heard from their source was so vastly different from the reality I understood that I spent the first hour of questioning completely lost and confused because I genuinely could not understand what they were asking about. Their source had apparently said that I individually replicated the entire student body and thusly asked who I planned on targeting first. I tried explaining how long hand-making 2,000 models and textures by hand would take, but they seemed to tune out every time I opened my mouth. Their source maintained that I had publicly released this map and that he had played it multiple times at my insistence. There were other things. My dad had been on Paris for business and had grabbed some French newspapers for me, which I had stashed in my locker, waiting for a show-and-tell opportunity in my French class. I spent probably a half hour of my questioning reassuring the police that this was, in fact, French and not some kind of secret code language that I was using to communicate with people. They took the newspapers and I never got them back. After the initial "holy crap, they're pointing guns at me" wore off, it was a very strange day. One of the cops, I don't remember who, must have eventually figured out what was going on because he and I spent the last hour or so talking about Pixar and computer animated movies. I understand that they sent police cars to my family members' houses and searched at least my parents' house, but I don't think they had a warrant. My dad was out of state at the time, and my mom did not take my side. I'm pretty sure she waived my right to have an adult or attorney present during questioning, and I know she told the cops to arrest me and that she would not post bail. I know exactly who the police's source was. I was good friends with him and his brother for a few years. I have not spoken to either since I was dragged out of class. I have no idea what I did to anger either or both of them. It's important to note that this was sometime after the turn of the millennium, but before September 11th. If it was afterwards, I am completely confident I would have been on the receiving end of a proper SWAT team and the entire school would have been evacuated. TLDR, zip zop zoobity bam, time to nuke Afghanistan. I went to a very, very, very crappy school district. I mean, this place is scum in so many ways. My little brother has ADD and mild autism. He's a very nice kid and always has been. I mean, he opens doors for everyone and compliments people he doesn't even know. Anyways, there was a kid in his grade who was the biggest jerk. He was mean to everyone, even the poor kids who were his friends. He always picked on my brother and his friends, calling them the R word and everything else. One day, we get a code red. Everyone is stuck in their classrooms, and there had been a recent trend in girls fighting in the bathroom, so everyone assumed that was what was going on. No, I wish it had been a girl fight. I get called down to the office about an hour later. My brother and his best friend were walking to class. They were at the top of one of the stairwells when Jerky McJerkhat came up behind them and shoved my brother down the stairs as hard as he could. My brother tried to grab onto the brick wall to stop himself from falling and ended up dragging his hand down the bricks, ripping his hand apart. He still has the scar. He hit his face on the tile at the bottom after doing several head-over-heels rolls down the stairs. His nose and lip were bleeding, and his back was hurt so bad they thought he had broken it. He ended up going to the ER. Fast forward a week later. He's back in school and the principal calls him to her office. This woman. I don't know how this woman was ever allowed to work in a school. She made my brother shake hands with this jerk and make up. She said the alternative was both of them getting suspended because she did not believe my brother did nothing to provoke him from pushing him down the stairs despite two witnesses telling her what had happened. My brother has been bitter over that ever since. Also, when my mom found out she had to shake Jerky McJerkhat's hand, she went to the school and confronted the principal. The principal told my mom, well, maybe if your son wasn't annoying, it wouldn't have happened. My mom pulled her across the desk and a secretary had to pull her off of her. W's in the comments for that, mom, please. There wasn't really a zero tolerance thing back then, but school was over. I was starting my walk home and a friend runs by and drops his bag by me and yells to me to carry it. We were going to play hockey after school, so whatever. Nothing of circumstance came of it. I never heard where he was even running to. Next day, teacher is all ticked off. I go in to see the principal, and turns out my friend was trying to pick a fight. Mind you, apparently all he ever did was run after someone but never even got close to them. Not even the same block. There was no fight. This also happened all outside of the school. So naturally, my friend was suspended for a week plus remaining days in that week. And because I carried his bag, I was an accomplice in the fight, which never happened. I was suspended for the remaining days in that week. There was like a 2 to 3 day vacation for me that I was happy to take. It was all crappy rainy days, but I was happy to leave. Not quite zero tolerance, but my friend's sister grew up in quite a foul-mouthed household with older siblings. Her first words were, "son of a gun," blurted out emphatically for no apparent reason at the breakfast table. And when she was quite young, first grade, some boy pushed her on the playground. She called him a boob, he broke down and cried, told a teacher she had to eat lunch on the psychologist's office the rest of the year because she was a danger to the other students or something, and her mother, quote, had to come in. Mother told them that if they thought that was the most pressing issue they had, she thought they should look harder. Didn't go to the meeting. She's awesome in general. The boob got in no trouble for pushing her because he told on her first. She could have easily beaten the crap out of him. I'm in Britain, where zero tolerance isn't really a thing. I think the closest thing we got to zero tolerance were when teachers would hold an entire class back in detention, including the ones who were not disruptive and were doing the work. It seriously made me angry when I was at school. It happened mostly during years 7, 8, and 9. I'd have been 11 when I started year 7, which is the first year of secondary school in Britain. I know a girl who got suspended for having cough drops in the back seat of her car. I don't have a story, but I was blamed for a fight that happened on a weekend that wasn't even on school grounds. This kid who doesn't even go to my school, who has a name really similar to mine, got in a fight with some kid at my school, so naturally, they thought it was me. Thankfully, a couple days earlier, my friend told me about said fight, so I was able to provide some background information to get myself out of blame. But they took me to a friggin' room with the school cop and some other people, and they were treating this like a massive deal. It's a fight that happened on the weekend at a skate park, and one of the kids doesn't even go to the same school. Why are you meddling in their business? Bully punches kid in face. Kid doesn't fight back because he knows he'll get suspended for fighting. Kid lets the bully hit him until a teacher gets there. Teacher gets there and gives a detention to the bully and the bullied. My stepbrother and his friends all got suspended for pretending to have lightsabers at recess. No, not plastic ones. Literally their imagination. A boy bullied me for almost an entire year, called me fat, that kind of thing. I said if he kept talking to me, I was going to kill him. I got in-school suspension for 2 days. He got a talk from the guidance counselor about how you shouldn't bully girls you have a crush on. Edit, it's been so long that I don't really remember what happened, but the reason I got caught is because the teacher saw me crying. She came over to investigate, while he was harassing me, and heard me say that to him. Because the teacher didn't hear him say anything to me, I was the only one who got in trouble. Chewing gum. Rather, looking like I was chewing gum because my jaw was sore from having rubber bands on my braces. Ended up in an isolation room for the rest of the day and then got suspended for a week. Looking back now, I realize how stupid most grade school suspensions are because it doesn't really teach you anything other than the fact you get a vacation for looking like you're breaking a silly rule. The parochial school I went to had a zero tolerance for LGBT teens out of the closet. My senior year, right after I came out, the vice principal pulled me out of study hall and into his office to confront me about it. I'll never forget. I've heard some rumors. Are you gay? With the look on his face as if I had threatened to shoot the school up. Long story short, it was either go back in the closet or be expelled. I didn't want to leave because it was my senior year, I was almost done, and I wanted to graduate with my friends. In retrospect though, seriously, screw that guy and that school's administration. A kid from my school tweeted, quote, "suicide bomb, #RIP." This was apparently some references to a song, and the dude tweeted it right after a breakup. Anyway, my school decides to evacuate everybody for 3 hours while they bring in over a dozen K-9 units. There were 3 news helicopters there as well, along with a bunch of cop cars. The kid ends up being expelled. I once got detention because the 2 guys behind me were talking in line. We used to have to line up several times during the day, army style. Straight lines with uniform inspection, perfect silence. My only detention to date. When I was in high school, a girl spit in my eye. I see that as the lowest form of an insult you could possibly do to someone, so naturally, I retaliated. I yelled and screamed when my friend held me back. Eventually, due to heart issues and being overwhelmed with the stress on my body, I passed out. I woke up in a classroom, and that was about it. I gave the office my account on things, and they did their, quote, investigation. Well, if I remember correctly, it was a day or 2 later before we were both suspended for fighting. My school had a zero hat policy because of, quote, gangs. I got suspended for wearing a raccoon skin hat. I guess I was representing the Davy Crockett gang. Round 2. Make-A-Wish employees, what was the most strange thing a Make-A-Wish kid asked for and actually received? I shot an internal promotional video for Make-A-Wish once. I got to read through a big book of wishes they had granted. Some of them were so extravagant and amazing. Family vacations, celebrity meetings. And then I saw a 3-year-old who wished for a banana split for breakfast. And that's what they gave him. No one was like, "Ayo, wish higher." I helped host a visit to a planetarium by a kid whose wish was to go to the moon. The front office folks thought I could just give her a personal tour of the planetarium and show her some nice high-resolution visuals, but I thought she deserved better than that. I commissioned a jeweler friend and meteorite enthusiast to make a silver crescent moon necklace, which he graciously donated to the cause, and I donated a small lunar meteorite from my own collection. It was a gorgeous necklace, very much to the credit of my friend's artistry and generosity. We couldn't take her to the moon, so we gave it to her instead. She was thrilled, but later said her real highlight of the trip was the astronaut ice cream. Ah, kids. My daughter was a Make-A-Wish kid. She asked to go to Australia to meet the Wiggles. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to travel that far. We live in the US, health-wise. She made a second wish to meet Captain America. We never told Cap that he was a backup wish after the Wiggles were a no-go. When my sister was 5 and I was 8, she had cancer and the opportunity to make a wish. When our mom and the Make-A-Wish person sat down with her, they told her she could wish for whatever she wanted. She just kept saying she wanted macaroni. They kept saying, but it could be anything you want. Yet she simply wanted macaroni and cheese. After some strong encouragement to think bigger and the Make-A-Wish person suggesting Disneyland, she chose to go to Disneyland. My good friend had ALL leukemia. He asked for a ride in a fighter jet, and somehow he got it. I was surprised, because the doctors would say how his bones were getting fragile and weaker, and I guess I thought the G-forces of the jet would hurt him, but he was fine and had a blast. He's doing better now and is scheduled out in about 3 months. I was granted a wish after beating brain cancer in 2015. They flew my mom and I out to the capital city of our state, and we stayed in the flashiest, most expensive hotel suite with all the bells and whistles. We got free dinner, drinks, and dessert on arrival, got to chill in the VIP lounge while we were waiting for our room. Our room was decorated with teddy bears and chocolates and Make-A-Wish decorations. The next day, we were chauffeured to the local mall in a limo, and I went on an 11-hour shopping spree with a preloaded Visa card and bought every solitary thing you could imagine a 16-year-old girl wanting. I ended up having to buy another suitcase to take everything home with me, but it was the most epic 3 days of my life. I'll never forget it. Number 1. To be a merman, a boy mermaid. He got a tail and swam in the giant tank with other mermaids at the aquarium. Number 2. To play football with the quote, red team. No pro or college preference, just had to be red. USC made it happen. Number 3. To be a quote, cool kid. Got a limo ride to the mall. Red carpet entrance with cheering fans, signed autographs, shopping spree for clothes. 5 years old. So cute and very cool. Number 4. To be Robin. Not Batman. He said he wasn't ready for that. Went on an epic adventure fighting crime with Batman. I was a chef at a fancy steakhouse in Jacksonville, Florida. One day, my proprietor came to me and said, "This is Stacy, the new girl. She'll be training with you." I look over, and it's this adorable little girl in a bright pink chef's coat. I babysat my little cousins at the time, so I was actually pretty used to entertaining 10-year-old girls at the time. So I showed her the ropes. We made all kinds of stuff that were on the surface kinda random. Candied bacon, cornbread, prosciutto-wrapped Boursin cheese-stuffed asparagus, a sweet tea-brined pork chop, a sorrel garnish salad-type thing, and some other cool garnishes. We were having fun. I then made a puree out of the cornbread, let her plate up the dish a few different ways to show how you can play with the ingredients and height to showcase different parts of the dish. She had a blast. It was only at the end when the father came up to me in tears that I realized what was going on. In the moment, I was a little upset because nobody told me, but I realized it was for the best. I probably would not have been as bright and vibrant with the lessons had I have known, but it was a fulfilling experience for sure. I sure hope that family is doing well. Side note, I have reworked and reran the dish as a special a few times in memory of that day. It was that impactful. If there's one thing in the world I would wish for, it's for you to subscribe to the Am I the Jerk channel and Am I the Genius linked in the description below. Thanks for watching, and drop a like if you're enjoying the video. It really helps. I worked at a hospice, and we had a wishing program. One of our patients, 24-year-old with brain cancer, wanted to hold a sloth. Apparently, sloths are very nervous creatures, so it's a little tricky to actually hold one. I found a local company that does visits to schools and whatnot who had a sloth. Sloths only poop about once a week, bear with me here, and the sloth could only travel the day after he pooped, because they get nervous any longer than that and the sloth has stress diarrhea. So basically, we had to wait until the sloth pooped and then set up the visit for the next day. The sloth pooped on Thanksgiving, so we set up the visit for the next morning. The patient was able to hold and pet a very sweet sloth. The patient died about 3 weeks later, and I am very happy I was able to help give her some joy in her final moments. Wow guys, I did not expect this to blow up. Thank you so much for the awards. The hospice I worked at had a special program called Faithful Wishes for any of our patients, regardless of age. As the volunteer coordinator, fulfilling these wishes was part of my job. I do believe there are other nonprofit organizations that grant wishes to adults, but nothing as large as Make-A-Wish. Yes, the sloth was tame and lived in an animal preserve. He would also visit schools and retirement communities, schedule permitting. And yes, I absolutely learned more about sloth bowel movements than I ever wanted to. I worked at a Lego retail store in the 2000s, and Make-A-Wish approached us for a child with terminal osteosarcoma who wanted to be in the store for a day. Lego unfortunately denied the request, which surprised myself and the rest of the staff because Lego was a pretty great company. Staff decided to honor the request ourselves. We closed the store early on a Sunday, then invited the kid and family in. He had a full run of the store. We collectively paid for like $1,000 worth of toys for him to take home and just spent the entire evening building whatever he wanted. He died a few months later. Not Make-A-Wish, but my brother got terminal brain cancer when he was 18. He was given 3 to 6 months to live. Back then, his only wish was to be an NFL player, but he was 5'8", all heart. He was just like Rudy in that Notre Dame football movie. He fought it for 6 years. Somewhere around his 22nd birthday, he and I were talking about having something worth living for. I told him it didn't matter what it was, but a vision for the future that he would fight for was important and encouraged him to find something to give his life to. We went on a vacation soon after that, and because we were broke from medical bills and 4 years of battling cancer as a family, this was a huge deal. We hadn't had a family vacation for a long time. A family friend put us up in their beach house and gave us some money to have a good time there. My brother came alive on the trip. It was so impactful to him that he came home and decided to start a nonprofit organization. He called it A Week Away. It was very similar to Make-A-Wish. Terminally sick patients apply and benefit from an all-expenses-paid vacation with their family or group of caregivers. That was a big deal to him to include the family, because if you've ever gone something like that, you know it's not just the patient who suffers and loses their freedom, it's everyone they are close to. He worked his butt off to start the organization. He formed it and began sending families to places like the Outer Banks and Ocean City and other East Coast beaches. A week before he died, he launched his first big, month-long fundraiser. He passed away knowing that he had raised enough to send like 10 families on respite weeks. It was like he was passing the baton off to others who could keep on fighting. The org is still going strong today. If anyone is blessed to have their health and a sweet vacation spot you like to donate for occasional use by sick people all coordinated by an awesome organization, I'd encourage you to reach out to the A Week Away folks. You get to play a part in people's lives like the awesome people helping in these Make-A-Wish stories. There was a Make-A-Wish kid in a class I taught once, and their wish was to tour a pickle factory. Pickles were their all-time favorite food, and they wanted to see how the sausage was made, so to speak. Apparently, Vlasic rose to the occasion in a major way, and she had the time of her life. A friend of mine is a K-9 police officer. He helped Make-A-Wish grant a wish to a set of twins with the deadliest form of cystic fibrosis. Most of the time, kids with CF aren't allowed to be around others with it because of cross-infecting bacteria. Them being twins shortens their life expectancy even more. Well, these 10-year-old boys wanted to meet a police dog. My friend and some of his buddies upped the wish, and during their meeting of his dog, they got called to help solve 3, quote, crimes in their town. They pulled over a hijacker, found and arrested a robber, and helped find a, quote, missing 6-year-old, my friend's nephew. The town police department gave them certificates and honorary police badges for their work. Around 200 people showed up to where they got their awards to cheer them on. At their 11th birthday, they gave my friend a plaque they made with their dad, thanking him for the best day ever. I was approached by a similar organization who wanted to arrange a day for a kid to shadow a veterinarian. I'm just a small animal veterinarian with a small hospital, so I found it odd that I'd be approached. I said yes, who the heck would say no? And we picked a day and had our regular patients in the hospital, and the kid got to watch us do our thing for a day. We gave him a lab coat and a stethoscope and let him tag along and see x-rays and ultrasounds and watch surgeries. I brought my dog in so he could try the ultrasound on her. He seemed to enjoy it. It wasn't a terribly strange request, really. It just seems like my day-to-day isn't something anyone would consider their dream experience. In Wizard 101, there's a quest with an NPC named Brandon, named after a Make-A-Wish kid who played the game. And his request was to design a side quest for the game. You meet Brandon and go help him clear out this dungeon with 2 really hard bosses. Was a lot of fun. At the end, you get a gem you can socket that lets you summon Brandon into battle as a follower. Pretty cool. Not sure what ended up happening to Brandon, but it's really cool that thousands of people have gotten to enjoy being a part of his wish, to be honest. My cousin was a Make-A-Wish kid. He loved golf, had a scholarship to go play college, he loved it so much. He got to meet and play a round of golf with Payne Stewart. Unfortunately, he died not too long after that. Screw cancer. I know someone who was granted a wish. Of all things they could choose, they asked for 2 tiny birds. 2 budgies. After I survived cancer at 17, I was offered a wish. I went to Christmas Island with my family to see the spawning of the red crabs, reckoned to be one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. Picture it. 1 million fist-sized red land crabs making their way down to the sea edge to release their eggs into the ocean over a period of just 3 hours or so. The Make-A-Wish volunteers looked horrified as I explained it. And I'm typing this now, so yes, I lived. Thanks. Edit. Come to think of it, I'm pretty sure my wish caught my family a bit off guard too. I had a coworker at my student job in college who had leukemia as a child. He wished to be in the IDOWorkHereLady, so they flew his family to Alaska and he got to meet all the dogs and ride in a sled for a leg of the race. If I remember correctly, he also got a husky puppy. He was 20 when I met him. I was a couple of years older and graduated college and never saw him again. The leukemia came back and he died in 2016. I don't think he was much older than 25. One of the nicest guys I've ever met. I hope heaven is real, just for you, Ben. When I was on a carrier, they flew a kid and his parents out. They routinely fly distinguished visitors, but we thought it was weird there was this kid. They got tours and watched flight ops, but he couldn't fly with us, so they asked us to have dinner with him so he could at least meet pilots and ask questions. It was really humbling when we realized this is what he was there for. He literally wished to just come see what we do and hang out with us. I'm a Make-A-Wish volunteer. The volunteers get to do all the fun stuff, like meet with the families, get the kids excited about their wish. We send little gifts and stuff along the way, and then be there when the wish is granted. We don't have to do any of the boring admin stuff. I have a little girl right now whose original wish was a unicorn, 6-year-old with severe epilepsy, has 15 seizures a day, and has been through 10 surgeries already. She wasn't having any of that fake stuff, like a stuffed animal or a costume. She insisted for weeks on a unicorn. That one was hard to manage. She's getting a cat. I was a Make-A-Wish kid back in 2017, and my wish was to go see a live brain surgery in Seattle at University of Washington. I loved Grey's Anatomy, I loved Dr. Shepard, and I had brain cancer, so I wanted to see what my doctors kinda saw. What an experience, and I learned so much. I was a little neurosurgeon for a day, and the neurosurgeon was playing the Pixies while operating. What a great happy moment. I won't forget. They even sent my family from Arizona to Seattle with me to have dinner with me in the Space Needle. I was a Black Hawk pilot in the Army, and we had a Make-A-Wish kid who wanted to fly in an Army helicopter. We had to remove all the seats so we could strap his wheelchair down in the middle of the helicopter, and we flew him around at treetop level, yanking and banking with the doors open for a while. I'm a wish granter. My strangest personal wish was a refurbished 80s camper so that she could have her own space. She couldn't go out in public while her transplant was new-ish, and she was going crazy in the house with 2 younger siblings. It was actually pretty cool, although the strange part was that Make-A-Wish can't actually use, quote, used things like that. So we had to get her a new VW camper, or something like that, it's been a while, and, quote, artfully make it look vintage. So strange. Anyways, please feel free to apply to be a Make-A-Wish volunteer. It's such a rewarding experience, and even if you don't feel like you can work with the kids, there's also other volunteer positions like fundraising, event planning, and more. Former employee here. Over half of the wishes are Disney-related, and beyond that, they typically fall into a few categories. I wish to travel, I wish to meet, I wish to be, I wish to have, I wish to give. You get the idea. So, I always liked wishes that fell outside of the typical wish categories. One time, there was a boy that wished for the perfect baked potato. I don't know if the wish granters went through with that wish. They may have waited until he was a little older, but I still laugh when I think about it. Volunteers are trained to ensure they are determining the child's one true wish, not mom's wish to go on a cruise or dad's wish for new tools, etc. A lot of work and thought goes into fulfilling a child's wish. My brother had cancer when we were in high school. We all got to go to an ice skating rink in New York City and play hockey with some of the New York Rangers. He was a Flyers fan, but what can you do? This wasn't actually his wish, but it was set up by the Make-A-Wish Foundation for all the terminal kids at the hospital, I'm pretty sure. I used to know a dude who got sick in high school, and his wish was to see Rocksteady Studios and be in one of their games. The studio was super cool, evidently, and they put him in Arkham Knight as a GCPD officer. Best part of the story is that he recovered, and, last I heard, is still doing okay to this day. Glad to see that I'm not the only one with this, quote, weird request. I was also eligible for Make-A-Wish when I started high school, and I asked to visit DICE at their HQ in Stockholm. I didn't ask to be in any of their games though. Dang it, why didn't I think of that? I was passionate about game development, and I still am, and thus wanted to see what it's like to work in a AAA studio, and also ask a bunch of game dev stuff. They constantly asked me, "Are you sure you wouldn't rather want to go to Disneyland?" I said, "This is my Disneyland." Guess they thought it was a weird request for a 15-year-old to make. This year, I finished my bachelor's degree in computer science, and in the future, I can hopefully land a job in game dev. Edit, I see many people here congratulating me for surviving. I forgot to disclose that the condition I have is not nearly as deadly as, for example, cancer. I have had a heart condition that has been treated through surgery since birth. This condition will never go away and can cause death even after treatment, but my doctor monitors my condition every year so far, and it's looking excellent. Just wanted to address this. Okay, this is more wholesome than anything, but a girl who was a grade above me had cancer in high school. She graduated, and I joined the band my senior year to see this plaque with her name and face on it from Make-A-Wish. She used her wish to donate new instruments to the school's band, as they were needing new ones. I still know her to this day, and she makes a ton of jokes about cancer that it even freaked out her college roommates. She's one of the nicest people I've ever met. I had a wish when I was 8 due to having leukemia and a bone marrow transplant. My first thought was meet Bruce Willis. Die Hard was my newly discovered favorite film. But my dad asked if I wanted something that would last like a computer. I always loved playing on the hospital computers, so yeah, I went for that. Best decision ever. I might owe my career to it. I hear Bruce Willis is a bit of a jerk IRL anyway. A funeral. He knew his parents wouldn't be able to afford one, so he wished to have his funeral paid for. They were able to convince him to make another wish, and he wished for gold lockets for his mom and sister with his initials engraved on them. Edit, his funeral was paid for as well. I believe another nonprofit helped with that. They just really wanted him to have a wish for himself, but all he cared about was his family. I'm not a Make-A-Wish employee, but a kid at my church a long time ago wished to sit in a bathtub full of peach-colored loofahs. The softball kind, obviously, not the hard, sponge-like ones. He got it, and the church bulletin had a picture of this kid smiling like a maniac in a huge bathtub full of loofahs, so I guess he was happy with his wish. When my son was 3, his Make-A-Wish was to meet Elmo. For a 3-year-old, not that strange, I guess. Sent us to Sesame World in Philly. We get there, and they had no clue he was on a Make-A-Wish trip, but they were great, and he met Elmo. My wife worked as a nurse at a children's hospital and cared for a 17-year-old cancer patient whose wish was to meet Wiz Khalifa. He showed up and spent the day. My wife said they went on a walk and came back high as balls. She said it was a great day for the boy and his family. He passed away a few weeks later.
Medical professionals. What's the best reaction you've seen from a dad during the birth of his child?
I've been told that my dad's response to my entering this world was, "It's a person."
I was born in the 80s and the ultrasound technology wasn't that great. What my parents didn't know was that instead of one baby, there were 2. Our hearts were beating at the same time and they could never really tell the gender, so they thought it was just one baby. So I came out. Then my mum says, "Doc, I still feel pain."
and he looks and says, "I see another head." Apparently my father said, "What the frick? Whose baby is that?" And then my sister popped out. They were obviously floored. When I was born, my dad pulled out a Sharpie and drew a star at the bottom of my foot to make sure they didn't lose me. Fun fact, if you do that to a premature baby, it can leave a permanent tattoo, because the skin isn't done yet. The more you know. So if I wrote "Made in China" on a preemie baby's foot. I was a C-section baby. A couple of years ago, the topic came up with my parents while drinking. I mentioned that this sounds kind of gross. My father looks me right in the eye and says, "Have you ever seen Alien? It was just like that." I've seriously threatened my wife with watching the Alien trilogy while she was pregnant. I almost passed out at the first C-section. We named our eldest daughter Ripley as her ultrasound photo made it look like she would emerge teeth and claws flailing. When I was born, my father, who's a gynecologist himself, came from watching me do my big entrance, or exit depending on how you look at it, and said to my mum, "You're not gonna believe what you just did." I was over 10 pounds at birth. For some reason, when they mentioned that their father was a gynecologist, I imagined him holding up a judge's number rating once the baby came on out of there. I don't know why, other than that his job would make him maybe a little more detached from the emotion of it all. Some more comments to follow. My uncle was 13 pounds when he was born in the late 1930s. My grandmother was 5'1" tall and he was her first child. That woman had a uterus and a hoo-ha of steel. No other explanation. Apparently she couldn't feel her legs properly for about 3 months afterwards. I was 11 pounds even. My mom came so close to breaking my dad's arm, they gave her a rolled-up blanket to squeeze instead. Luckily, I was a pretty quick birth, 5 hours, I believe. My dad went to the hospital to visit me and my mom at the time. After hearing a baby's screams so loud you could hear it in the elevator, he turns to the nurse with a silly grin on his face and tells her, "Well, this one has quite the vocal cords. I'm feeling sorry for his parents already." She turns to him and tells him, trying not to laugh, "You're telling me, it's yours." My dad missed my birth because he was choking on a sandwich. Like he was super excited and choked, or just an unfortunate coincidence? My dad missed my birth because he was buying a lottery ticket one state over. My parents weren't married and I was unplanned, and if my mum is telling the truth, he didn't want me at first and had wanted her to get a termination. It was only until after he held me for the first time that he realized he wanted me. And he's been a very good dad, thankfully. A story comes to mind of a friend who, when his son was born, just started crying hysterically and hugged everyone. The doctor, nurses, he even ran out into the hallway and hugged people visiting other patients. Always makes me smile when I think of it. My friend told me his story. He was born with the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck. So, he was a little purple when he was born. His mum couldn't see what he looked like. His dad told her, "He looks like a California raisin." Ha! I actually had the reverse problem. I was hyperoxygenated and was red. My dad actually said, "Put this one back. She's not done yet." My husband coddled our first son because I wanted him to have something with his son I could never have. I saw him holding this red, wrinkly, swaddled little baby and said, "Oh, look, they dressed up a potato like Mother Teresa." My dad is a carpenter and was at work when he was told that my mum was in labor with me. His reaction? He went into a shocked stupor and accidentally shot his thumb with a nail gun. And that's the story of why my then 11-year-old sister had to fill out my birth certificate. Did she get to name you too? Be honest, is your name Poohface on your birth certificate? My friend got to name his little brother, named him Leonardo after a ninja turtle. My birth was both a terrifying and wonderful day at the same time. My mother hemorrhaged pretty badly, so my dad had this turbulent hour in which he was both crying with joy over the birth of his first child and also with terror at the thought of losing his wife. The doctors wouldn't let him back in the room while they were trying to save my mum's life. So apparently for this hour, all he did was pace the hallways outside the room holding me, and refusing to let anyone else near me, as if he was already preparing for it to just be me and him. My dad has never stopped being an utterly devoted and emotional father. To all those who asked, yes, my mother survived. At a forceps delivery last night, the dad-to-be was so horrified and impressed by the amount of pain his wife had gone through during her labor that he phoned up his own mum to say, "Thanks." I'm afraid to ask. Forceps delivery? Baby won't come out easily from the birth canal, so the doctor grabs its head with forceps and helps out. Usually leaves little dents because the baby's head is soft, but those straighten out afterwards. Note, usually straighten out afterwards. Multiple Redditors still retain scars and elongated heads. Thanks for the nightmares, guys. I think I finally decided to never give birth. When I was born after 13 hours of labor, my dad looked at my full head of black hair and blue eyes, looked at my mum and said, "Are you sure she's mine?" My grandfather was the one the nurses let carry me back to my room post-cleanup, and when my mum asked if I was okay, he said, "Yeah, I don't think the extra 2 toes will be a big hindrance," which led to my mum frantically tearing the blankets off to check my toes. Basically, the men in my family are buttholes. My brother was born about a year after me, and my mother had gone into false labor so many times that she only knew she was really in labor when she couldn't sleep that night. Anyways, later at the hospital, the doctor said that she was going to be in labor for a lot longer, so he went and ate dinner. She wasn't in labor for much longer. My grandmother delivered the kid and was holding him when a nurse walks by and says, "You can't do that." My grandmother retorts with, "Well, I'm not going to put it back." That doesn't sound like a very good nurse to me. No, that doesn't sound like a very good nurse. What did she think the grandmother was going to do? I imagine there was a fair bit of shock involved with realizing that a patient's family had delivered the baby instead of the hospital, but still. My father, up until I was born, had not seen a newborn baby, like ever. Naturally, he assumed that all babies look like they do in movies or commercials. As you can imagine, he was quite disappointed when an alien-looking thing is handed to him and introduced to him as his daughter. He handed me back to the doctors and went outside for a smoke to calculate how much all of the plastic surgeries were going to cost. Newborn babies are kind of gross looking, sticky and covered in baby cheese. Baby cheese? Well, now I'm not finishing the rest of my sub, thanks. My own husband, during my first C-section, the doctor asks if he wants to look over the curtain at the baby being delivered. He looks over, looks back with a look of horror. "What's wrong?" "Your insides are on your outsides." I will never forget the look on his face or the sound of his voice. "They're ripping you apart," is what my husband said in that exact situation. "They're tearing you apart, Lisa." When my mum gave birth via C-section to my brothers and I, triplets, the doctor asked my dad if he was okay watching the operation. My dad's response, "Oh yeah, it just looks like you're gutting a deer." My mum watched the second C-section, my husband had watched the first, and it fully satisfied his curiosity about where babies come from. She told me later that they hauled everything out, cut out the baby, then according to her, they stuffed you like a turkey to put everything back in. When I was born, they took me off immediately to clean me, take my footprints, bundled me up, and whatnot. I guess the 2 nurses were in a bit of a hurry and were doing both at the same time, and I managed to get a print of my left foot twice instead of a left and a right. Apparently, upon seeing the prints, my father became extremely distressed and literally ripped the blanket off me to make sure I didn't actually have 2 left feet. When my older sister was being born, my dad was in the room. He was so excited to watch that he screamed, "Honey, you gotta see this!" My mum said deadpan, "I'm a bit busy, can I get back to you, dear?" Kind of on topic, my mum said that when she woke up my dad to tell him her water broke, he jumped out of bed and started sweeping. She asked what the frick he was doing and he said, "I have to clean, the baby is coming." Just imagine what he's gonna think of these floors. "Get out the fine china." According to my parents, I was a super fast delivery. Like so fast that the doctors and nurses had stepped out of the room to go to attend to someone else, and my mum grabbed my dad and told him to get ready to catch me. My dad didn't even have time to put on gloves and had to catch me, baby gunk and all. Apparently he smiled, passed me to the nurses, who came rushing in, kissed my mum on the lips, then leaned over and vommed everywhere. In conclusion, baby gunk and spew. Medical professional here. We were trying to get mum to push for at least 10 seconds with each attempt at getting baby out. So I'm counting down from 10 and ask the dad to join in just as baby's head appears. 10, 9, 7, 4, 7, 3. The guy was so excited and nervous and caught in the moment that he forgot how to count. One of the most precious moments I've gotten to be a part of. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. My mum wanted to deliver me naturally, but there were complications. My head was way too big. My mum was still trying to push when the doctor realized he would have to perform an emergency C-section. Apparently they put the bars up on the side of my mum's bed, rushed her out of the room at full speed and turned the lights off, leaving my dad stranded alone in a hospital room by himself. He said he didn't know what to do, so he just sat down, still in the dark, and waited for someone to get him. A little over an hour later, a nurse came in to prepare the room, found my dad and brought him down to the nursery to see me. I laughed so hard just thinking about my father sitting alone, in the dark, in a random room in a hospital while I was being born. My father's son is a very well-educated, well-spoken man. He was with me in the hospital room when I gave birth, and the first thing he said after seeing our son the first time was, "Oh my God, look at his balls. They are huge on a newborn. Now I'm curious, but I don't want to search for baby balls." "Oh, here you go, attached pictures and hyperlink, for educational purposes. Wait, NSA, Prism, frick! Well, you took one for the team there, pal." My mum went into labor late in the evening. My dad was asleep, he had to work early. She went in and said, "The baby is coming, get up." He replied, "Calm down, it's fine, go have a cold bath." So she had my grandma take her to the hospital. In my dad's defense, if he sleeps as heavily as me, he probably wasn't even awake for this. My biological father was out drinking while I was born. My mum's best friend and the man I consider my father was there the whole time and used to tell me all the time how I could fit in one of his hands. Each time he told me, he looked teary-eyed. I'm curious as to whether this was a small or premature baby, or whether the fine father figure in question was in fact an enormous giant, or whether he was rocking gloves like Uncle Jack from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I was born on Father's Day, haha, funny story. My dad got tennis rackets and tennis balls as a Father's Day gift, so he was playing with them in the basement, hitting balls against the wall when my mum went into labor. So she yelled at him from the top of the stairs that the baby was coming, and my dad, he says, "Okay dear, I'll be down here playing tennis." She was livid. I was born in the 80s and my dad was in the operating room. I have a few older brothers who are all born naturally, but bro number 3 did some damage on the way out, so I was born via scheduled C-section, something my parents weren't really used to. My parents didn't know the gender of their new baby, me, ahead of time, so it was going to be a surprise. The surgeon put his hand in my mum's abdomen to reach for me and yelled to the room, "It's a girl," before getting me out. My dad was so excited he just blurted out, "How can you tell?" And the surgeon looked at him with a sarcastic face and said, "She's wearing earrings." When my dad was born, my grandpa wasn't even there. He was asleep in the lobby of the hospital. The doctor had to go and find him to tell him he was a father. When he came into the delivery room and the doctor showed him my dad, he only had one thing to say. "I thought they were supposed to be cute." My dad always said I looked like an undercooked lizard. It was a Sunday and my mum was in labor with me. The doctor comes in and asks, "How's it going?" Mum, "Oh, I'm feeling…" "Oh no, the football game. The Bears are playing and how's it going?" My dad, "Up by 7. I was delivered by C-section, but apparently my mum's contractions were so intense that while she was holding my dad's hand, she squeezed so tight that she broke it. Mind you, my dad is 6'4" with huge hands and my mum is only about 5'5". The day I was born, my dad took me down every hall in the hospital and showed me off to everyone who would look. "Look how beautiful my little girl is." My mum said he was gone with me for over an hour. "That is just the sweetest thing," put a big grin on my face. "Look at this beautiful thing that I made." "All by myself." Well, me and my wife, we get to keep it. I was in the OR assisting with a C-section. Dad was there and he passed out and crapped himself. I thought that was pretty fantastic. My dad likes to tell the story of my birth over and over. They knew I would be born early. At 6 months, the doctors realized they couldn't keep me in any longer. They warned my dad that I wouldn't cry because I was so premature. Not only did I come out mad as hell, but I screamed my little head off too. They told my dad that at 2 pounds I only had a 5% chance of survival. 1973, mind you. I proved them wrong on all counts. My dad broke his back a few days before my mum went into labor with my brother. He was still in the hospital recovering from surgery, not able to walk around yet. My mum went into labor in the same hospital, and my dad demanded for a large enough room for 2 beds and that they wheel his butt down to her room so he could be with her. So my dad was laying in a hospital bed with a broken back right next to my mum when she had my brother. Thankfully not the one that I personally saw, but when my younger cousin was born, they had someone who was still training in the room observing and whatnot. Well, after the birth, she was in charge of taking care of the placenta. It dropped out of her hands and splattered all over the floor. My uncle was so disgusted by it that he fainted. For the birth of my oldest brother, my dad was holding my mum's hand. After he was born, my mum noticed he was still rubbing his hand. She asked him why he was rubbing it, and my dad said, "Well, he was squeezing my hand pretty hard." My mum asks, "Why didn't you tell me I was hurting you?" Dad says, "Well, I figured you were probably in more pain than I was." They've been married for 31 years and they've both endured 4 more childbirths. Oh, my dad started freaking out so much when I was born that he stole my mum's oxygen mask for himself. The doctor started yelling at him about how the baby, me, needed the oxygen and had to steal it away from him. An older resident once told me the story about how he was working in New York City in his youth. There was a blizzard and a guy couldn't get his wife to the hospital in time. She gave birth at home and they brought them in to check up on the baby and mother. The dude is obviously in shock from the delivery and keeps saying, "I told him," the baby, "to stay in there. I told him to stay. Not an hour old and he's already stopped listening to me." Cracks me up every time he tells it. I'm just getting a hilarious mental image of this guy screaming, "Stop! Stop!" at his wife's hoo-ha. When I was younger and mad at my parents, I told them that I hoped I was switched at birth because there was no way I could be related to them. My mum said that wasn't possible because my dad literally never let go of me when I was in the hospital. He stayed with me the whole time because he was afraid someone would try to switch their crappy baby with his awesome baby. When my brother was born, his head was like a lemon being shoved out of a birth canal. My dad looked at him, then asked the doctor if his head was going to stay like that. He also wrote my name wrong on the birth certificate. I love my dad. When my sister was born in the 80s, my dad was ill-prepared for what newborns sometimes look like when they come out. Newborn skulls are kind of squishy, so when my sister got squeezed out, her head got a little squished and came out kind of conehead-like. In the delivery room, my dad smiled and said she was beautiful. Then he immediately exited, started crying, and called his friend Mike, a doctor, and said, "I don't know, man, there's something wrong with her. She came out looking like a frickin' hammerhead shark." His buddy had to convince him nothing was wrong and the head would go back to normal. Apparently he kept saying, "But she looks like a frickin' hammerhead," over and over again. Dad here. My second child was born with bright, shiny red hair. Neither me nor her mum have red hair. There were about 10 or 15 assorted doctors, interns, nurses, etc. in the room. One of the interns sees the hair and immediately asks, "So, does red hair run in your family?" Every medical professional in the room sucks in a breath. They knew the dangers of asking such a question, probably from previous births. I looked the intern in the eye and said, "Yes, hers and mine." Everyone breathed a collective sigh of relief and immediately went back to what they were doing. Had I been quicker on my feet, I would have said something to the effect of, "No, wait, frick, I knew it," and stormed out while everyone glared evilly at the intern. It would have taught him a lesson. My mum loves to tell the story about my older brother, parents' firstborn kid, being born. They got to the hospital around 2 a.m., and after the initial examination, the doctor said it was going to be a while still and disappeared. An hour or so later, the nurse says it's getting to be time, so she goes to find the doctor, and she can't. He's not answering pages or anything. There was a trash can at the foot of the bed, and my dad started freaking out, yelling about his first kid is going to be born straight into a trash can and what a horrible start to life that is. Another nurse calmed him down just in time for the doctor to show up yawning. He'd fallen asleep somewhere and nothing was waking him up. I worked in the local EMS system for about 6 years. In that time, I've become acquainted with a lot of the floor staff. Before my son was born, we arrived at the L&D unit and I was greeted by the staff warmly and excitedly. They made sure that both my then wife and I were treated with the best of care. Fast forward to 40 hours later. She had been in labor for 36 of them. I have not slept at all in that time frame, nor have I eaten. I was too nervous to leave her side, worried that I would miss the birth of my first child. The moment arrives, she's crowning. I'm there holding her hand and being comforting as I can when it hits me like a sack of bricks. Holy crap, you're about to have a kid. You, the irresponsible paramedic. You're about to be responsible for another human being. That played on repeat in my head. As my gorgeous son is delivered, the combination of exhaustion, stress, and hunger took me out. I remember the nurses say, "Wow, he looks really pale. Oh crap!" Then a whiteout and a thud. I waked up to the ED staff and some of my fellow EMS crews and L&D staff standing over me. To this day, I have not yet lived down that I, a 6'1", 300-pound ex-rugby player paramedic, was knocked out by a newborn who was 21 inches long, weighing 7 pounds 11 ounces. I love that story.
Reddit, what is the best comeback that works against all insults? I bet that sounded a lot cooler in your head. Once I saw an Am I the Jerk post where a bride was jealous of a guest because she was too beautiful and, quote, stole her day, even if she was perfectly elegant, and she was insulting her. The bride told her, "So next time, can I come to your wedding in a wedding gown?" The guest replied, "If you think it'll help." and I found that epic. Anytime my mom would get called names or insulted, she'd shrug and just say, "Everybody's gotta be something." I like this one, actually. I feel like it's the least argumentative comeback here. Deflecting people or responding with a witty thing can just rile them up. Source, Psycho Family, as they take it the same way as being ignored. This one gives a sort of illusion that you accept what they've said and they've already moved on from it. Like, I've heard what you said, I've taken it in, and I let it go before the bully even has a chance to process it themselves. I feel like there's still room for reconciliation after this response. It's important to remember the other person in these situations, not because we should be empathetic towards their abusive choices, but because we should be empathetic towards their lead-up emotions. My 5-year-old says mean things sometimes because he hasn't practiced patience and understanding enough. He's learned how to properly react, but he's not mature enough to utilize it properly every time he gets worked up. And this is not unexpected of a 5-year-old. A lot of people much older than 5 are also similarly emotionally immature. My husband didn't have much practice with patience before he met me. 10 years later, and he's all mellowed out. I'm not perfect, of course, but I am confident in my ability to stay cool in the face of craziness, which helps me remember to think of the other person. When my husband used to get irrationally upset about tiny things and then redirect that upsetness at me, I always considered that he may literally never have had the chance to learn these things before meeting me. He was, emotionally, a 5-year-old. I can't expect greatness until he's had the opportunity to learn how to be great in the first place. Although, I don't put myself through abuse for the sake of another person's learning experience. If I ever feel unsafe or uncomfortable in an abusive situation, I just leave. That's with my 5-year-old and my husband. I always tell my son, "You've got a little body, but huge emotions, so sometimes they spill out a little bit. I don't want you to hurt me and regret it later. As soon as you're done letting those emotions out, I'll come in and hug you. Just yell for me." Then he screams into his pillow or destroys some Lego structures and calls me in to comfort him when he doesn't feel like those emotions are spilling out as much. At the end of his anger outbursts, he always cries in regret for having been angry in the first place. That vulnerability point is where we practice coping mechanisms for his anger. I saw similar emotions in my husband 10 years ago, albeit less obvious. Angry adults are, internally, little 5-year-olds whose emotions are spilling over, and they're scared. Not an excuse, but a shining light onto the anger process in their brains. Not sure where this rant came from today, but here it is. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. That sounds like something you would say. Dang, people are right about you. Well, I guess what everyone says about you is true. My dad told me to say this, and the typical bully type will generally go crazy thinking everyone talks about them behind their back. Just say okay and move on. People who insult want a reaction. Don't give it to them. I found out just asking why and putting them in a position to explain their insult which didn't have much thought behind it works well. Pull my earbuds out with a confused expression and ask, "What?" Hold a stare and blank face for at least 3 seconds and then ask in a concerning tone, "Are you okay?" Up your butt and around the corner. Worked when I was 10. Big fan of the pause for a beat, deadpan, and then some variation/combo of, "You done? Feel better now? Got that out of your system?" Just that pause and little bit of patronizing tone while dismissing the childlike behavior usually does more to the ego than a counter-insult. I'm a woman, and my job basically boils down to arguing with attorneys who are mostly men with huge egos and a large helping of disdain for people they deem, quote, beneath them. It's common for them to get pushy, loud, and insulting when they're not getting their way. That was intimidating at first, but now I look forward to it because it gives me an opportunity to use my favorite line. "It sounds like you're getting a little emotional about this. Do you want to call me back when you've calmed down so we can get this done?" This is always met with a delicious pause, followed by them either hanging up or launching into the most high-pitched screeching you've ever heard. Being called emotional by a woman who is perfectly calm breaks something in them, and it's my favorite thing. Never in my life would I have described an attorney as a, quote, whiny baby type until I worked for a couple. Jesus Christ, you weren't kidding. Attorneys who are mostly men with huge egos and a large helping of disdain for people they deem beneath them? 100% all of this. It was insane. Any woman non-attorney working for them was tasked to be their mom or maid. It was infuriating to see such a caste system in place in current times. They literally would ask you a question and then stop listening halfway through your answer. They'd hire you for one job only to end up getting another job babysitting the admin. Or the poor intern who just wanted to learn tax law was roped into cooking for the entire office. She was not trained to be a caterer, but was expected to be one. She finally just quit because she was tired of being told food service was now her job. It was an insane place to work at, and I think I made it 6 months before I realized working for these people were insane. At one point, I was working on my laptop, authorized, because we were waiting on my new equipment to show up and I had to bring in my personal computer in the meantime. The head partner knew this. His office manager knew this. I had been working about a month on my laptop and no one had an issue with it. One morning, this jerk starts screaming at me how using a personal computer was a security risk and how does he even know that I'm working on work and not personal stuff, etc. The guy was, quote, brilliant at being a lawyer, but couldn't remember a conversation from last week. He changed his mind constantly. We'd start a project only to have him abandon or change it completely the next week. It was insanity. It opened my eyes to what kind of people lawyers actually are. I think the worst part is, commenting on this before, how many people pop up and say how a lot of them are insufferable to work for like the ones I did.
Alright, here's the 411. Say some gangsta is dissing your fly girl. You just give him one of these. You're not subscribed to Am I the Genius or Am I the Jerk, linked in the description below. And like the video while you're at it.
TLDR, being in the trades gets you some good practice and comebacks. I'm an electrical apprentice. And when I first started, there was a bit of hazing and teasing from the journeymen. It never got too bad, mostly a lot of talk. One in particular was kinda on me one day, and since he was fairly young, just recently licensed, I just responded like, did someone treat you like this when you were an apprentice? Do you have some unresolved issues? Do you need a hug? Oddly, he never really responded, but I didn't have any trouble with him anymore. On the same job, the excavator accidentally broke our grounding grid. A big underground copper cable grid used to ground all the structures in the substation. So I had to jump down, in the rain, into the hole to patch it up. It was wet and muddy, but I was wearing a full rain suit. Another older journeyman, who was my foreman and had worked for my father more than once, made a sarcastic remark along the lines of, "We should take a picture. Wouldn't your daddy be proud?" I just looked up at him and said, "Well, I'm doing my job, I'm doing it well, and I'm not moaning and complaining about it. Yeah. He likely would be proud." I also had another apprentice yell at me, "Stop talking to me like I'm a freaking moron," to which I responded, "Stop talking to me like you're a freaking moron." I did kind of provoke him, but he was being really dense. And basically takes all the wind out of their sails. They want to get a rise out of you, and responding like this doesn't give them the satisfaction. I once had someone say to me, "Jesus, they let you out for the day and this happens?" I had to laugh and give them that one. Stick your finger in your mouth/cheek and pull it forward and out so that it makes a popping noise. There are many people who wouldn't be speechless after witnessing that during a conversation/argument. Well, that's just like your opinion, man. Just laugh out loud. If someone's trying to make you mad, acting like nothing they've said matters to you in the least and their attempts at making you feel bad are laughable will really take the wind out of their sails. I've done it. It's immensely satisfying. I once got punched in the face by a guy who had started trying to bully me in 7th grade. I don't know why, but I just started laughing. That uncontrollable, this isn't funny and it's not appropriate to laugh right now, but there's no way to stop it type laugh. It wasn't intentional, and I wasn't trying to freak the guy out, but he turned beet red, mumbled that I was a freaking psycho, and stalked away. He wouldn't even make eye contact with me through the end of high school, so that worked out well. I envy the people that don't know you. So's your face. Bold words for a man in white sauce distance. You freaking Americans will use anything except the metric system. There was a female gamer during a live stream, taking crap for some jerk she just beat. Without a pause, she drops, "I'm going to screw your dad tonight and give birth to someone he actually loves." It's easy, guys. Just repeat what they've said back, but in a high-pitched, sarcastic tone. I find it works especially well in customer service when dealing with tricky complaints.
I think I know the answer, Mr. Garrison. Shut up, fat boy. Hey, don't call me fat, you Jew.
My dad told me to respond to bullying by saying, "Sorry about your family situation," and walk away, looking very sympathetic and sad. Like, you understand, and it's okay. I've caused a few breakdowns for sure.
Yeah, well, the jerk store called and they're running out of you.
Just walk away while they're talking. It's probably the rudest thing you can do. Plus, you save your time, and if they call you a coward, smile in evil joy as you know they'll be thinking about this for the rest of the week. I don't get why that's funny. Can you explain it to me? As soon as they start talking, I was just kidding. I don't actually care what you think. Hit him with the old, "It doesn't matter what you think," like The Rock used to do. You want my comeback? You'd have to wipe it off your mom's teeth, Jimmy Carr. First of all, brush your teeth.
Your mother was a hamster and your father smelt of elderberries.
The anti-comeback is my favorite. A light breeze has more effect on me than someone insulting or bullying me these days. I couldn't tell you what the last 5 or 10 people in my life that tried to publicly humiliate me even looked like. I never looked at them. What they were saying never made me miss a beat in whatever I was doing. They get so mad every time, try to bait me a few times, and then eventually give up. Meanwhile, everyone around me can hear and see what's happening. There's only one person that everyone is witnessing making a fool out of themselves, and it's not me. The no reaction, is the best reaction. I don't even entertain crap talkers, and if anything, let them have their quote, moment, as it gives a decent perspective as to where their heads are at. I moved into a new neighborhood a few years back, and I have no idea what I did to get on one of my neighbor's bad side. I've moved every 18 months of my life since birth, and lived all over the world, and it wasn't until almost 40 that I came across the most vile and disturbed neighbor I've ever had. Shortly after moving in, got invited to a little get-together, and dude was projecting for almost an hour, straight giggling and laughing his butt off the whole time, trying to get a rise out of me. He had spent some time looking me up online and was boasting about things he had found. I'm a former celebrity overseas, and my life is an open book, and I've had a few stalkers in the past. This guy took the prize for the most obsessed and weird. Weirdest interaction I've ever had when first meeting someone, let alone a new neighbor. Thanks to them, I cleaned up my online presence as I am no longer famous, was a long time ago, and don't bother with people younger than me anymore. We would have neighborhood watch meetings, and the guy or his boyfriend would make some snide remarks about my son's attire. I never gave them the time of day, and everyone could see them festering from their weird obsession with being so negative. I'm a pretty self-aware dude, and know if I'm committing a social faux pas, this dude apparently isn't. Let them keep talking without engaging, and it will speak volumes about them versus whatever it is they're accusing or bullying you for. Freaking weirdos. I'd give you a nasty look, but you've already got one. Oh, sweetie. Did that make you feel good? Oh. Just a dead-eye stare that lasts too long. No words. No one likes to screw with crazy. Sudden and overwhelming physical violence! Am I the Genius or am I the Jerk, and their affiliated parties do not support, endorse, or condone physical violence. The opinions of Reddit users are their own and do not reflect upon the Am I the Genius or Am I the Jerk YouTube channels. Okay, thanks, bye.
Well, I never. Good day to you, sir. I said good day.
My husband has a bunch of uncles. One uncle is a real piece of crap known for screwing everyone over, but the family still protected him and acted like he was okay. Without going into details, the uncle pulled some dirty, illegal crap when my husband's dad died. Everyone in the family warned us beforehand that he might try to do something. So when he did it, I laid into him, telling him we had been warned he would do it. I told him he was no gentleman, he was a liar and a thief who should be ashamed of himself. He left and went outside and started crying. The thing that hurt him was hearing that his family had warned us. I guess he had no idea how they truly felt about him, and being told he wasn't a gentleman was a deep cut. Where I trained, there was an old joke we used to say. Long-winded, but here you go. A young man goes to the circus on a first date and is sat on the ringside watching the acts when the clowns came in. One clown looked at the young man and steams over to him, getting right in the face. "Screw off! Go on, get out!" Embarrassed, the man leaves his date and leaves the circus. Full of shame and anger, he decides he's never going to be spoken to and belittled like that again. He studies hard, becomes a litigation lawyer, and becomes world famous in his field. He becomes known as the man who wins every case and can make grown men cry with just a withering look, but he can never forget the shame at his treatment from the clown. Many, many years after his initial visit at the circus, he returns, all prepared to get his own back, and finally, his moment arrives. The clowns walk into the ring. The clown immediately spots him and steams right over, getting in his face again. "I told you before, screw off! Go on, get out!" The man stands up, the shame from all those years ago rising in him. He draws a deep breath, looks the clown straight in the eye, and stutters, "Frick off, big nose!" I told you it was long-winded, and also not terribly funny. However, it became the stock response in the workshop whenever someone needed putting in their place with an insult, and never failed to make the workshop laugh. Sidebar, I've been having some trouble trying to find some of the longer ones or the ones that are original because there are 5 comments in a row that just say, "No you, no you, no you, no you, no you." Like, it's funny the first time, and only the first time. I play hockey, and locker rooms can get fun with all sorts of crap talk flying around. My favorite was actually directed at me. I had a headache and nausea, turns out from a concussion in our previous game, and my teammate looked at me and says, "I got a straw in my car." Confused, I say, "A straw?" And mate replies with, "Yeah, so you can suck the heck up and play." Hilariously brutal roast, and all in good fun. My wife normally says to her sister, "Should I build a bridge?" When her sister says, "Why?" she says, "So you can get over it."
Your mother should have eaten you while your bones were still soft.
Hello, 911? Yes, this one, right here. Being a knob won't make yours bigger. There is no single, quote, best comeback that works against all insults, as different insults require different responses depending on the context and the individual involved. However, a general strategy for responding to insults is to avoid reacting emotionally and instead respond calmly and confidently. This can involve using humor to deflect the insult, questioning the validity of the insult, or simply ignoring the insult altogether. Ultimately, the most effective response will depend on the specific situation and the individual involved, and it's important to remember that not all insults require a response. Thanks, ChatGPT. Look them up and down, the whole body, and simply say with disinterest, "You're boring." That will live in their brain rent-free for the next 40 years, guaranteed. For me, racial slurs have never been a trigger. At this point, I've been called all of them due to no one knowing what race I am, and my patience while being insulted either confuses or makes them more angry while I'm just taking verbal abuse. I'm a light brown Thai Asian, but I have the mannerisms and accent, according to my friends of every race, of a white American dude, and my looks do not scream Asian. I think this is evident because my eyes do not have an evident Asian look. As such, I've been confused for Japanese, Chinese, Australian, Burmese, Cuban, Mexican, Brazilian, Iraqi, Afghan, Black, African, Egyptian, French, Scottish, Eskimo. Inuit is correct. Eskimo is a slur. And the most stupid one, Muslim. Yes, a person said I looked like a Muslim, as if it was a race. Of course, the moment I start talking, having a Michigan accent throws off most people angry at me as they either try to comprehend what race I am and what insult to use against me, or most of the time, I bring them back to reality and they're trying to figure out whether it's worth wasting more energy. More, they caught themselves before saying something worse. When someone acted crazy in class, my math teacher would always say something like, "A good doctor will help you to get rid of that." Got bullied in high school by a guy in a couple classes. One day, I finally had enough. Bully. "Man, you're totally gay." Me. "You must be also, since from what I can tell, you're trying to flirt with me every day." Bully's friends start busting up laughing. Me. "I guess this is the point where you ask me out." Awkward silence from bully. Him and his group leaves, never to torment me again. I bet you eat corn the long way.
What's the craziest advice someone has given you about your pregnancy? I was about 8 months pregnant. I said something at a family dinner one Sunday about how I was scared of labor. My gram shouts out, "You know, you should smoke a blunt." Now, my family's open about their green herb use. Most of my family will smoke from time to time, but my grandmother has never smoked in her life, so I was a bit confused.
I just looked at her, and she keeps on going, "If you smoke blunts well into your labor, it will keep you calm and help the pain. I'll find you some green herb. Just smoke it in the bathroom of the hospital. But wear socks. You have ugly feet, and the doctor won't help you if he sees your cracked heels." My Grammy sure is something. I didn't take her advice, and the doctor delivered my baby even with my cracked heels. And once I had the baby and could reach my feet again, I made sure they weren't cracked anymore. Got severe itching all over my body during the 7th month. Did the routine test for liver function, all normal. Colleague advises, rub your husband's underwear which he has left for wash or laundry all over your body as a remedy for itching. No, I did not follow that advice. Oh, I was told that I need to shave down there or the baby will get carpet burn. Like, what? I feel like shaving down there would be the thing that gave the baby stubble burn. When I was pregnant past my due date, a coworker advised me to drink cod liver oil mixed with vodka. Apparently, this mixture would upset my digestive system, give me horrible diarrhea, and thus trigger labor contractions. To clarify, I did not drink this combo to help with being overdue. I ended up several days later being medically induced, and the labor delivery was swift and baby healthy. He's a grown man now. That I should drink her crappy MLM aloe vera juice every day. It's not advisable for pregnant women. I knew when I started this story collection that it would be full to bursting with homeopathic crap, and I think we've done quite well to have this be our first story about it, to be honest. My labor should be painless because Jesus died and erased the pain during childbirth, penalty humans got from Eve. If I feel pain, it's because I don't believe in Jesus' redemptive powers. That's not how that works. That's not how any of that works. Was told not to drink hot tea because then I would boil my baby. The reasoning for this advice was that the umbilical cord acted as a sort of snorkel from the baby to the mother's navel. If the navel was submerged, the baby wouldn't be able to get air. I had a coworker tell me that eating peanut butter, I was eating an apple with peanut butter on my lunch break, would give my baby cancer. I already thought she was the world's greatest idiot, so that nugget of wisdom was just confirmation. Don't raise your arms above your head. It will tangle the baby's cord and the baby will die. I came here having been given this advice as well. Even worse, the kid was born with the cord around his neck and needed to be delivered by C-section for other reasons. I could tell she wanted to say I told you so. Both mine had their cords wrapped and I had 2 C-sections, but cords wrapped aren't really that unusual. But I'm sure she would have loved to, I told you so, me. She's also the woman that told me she blames her 1970s potty training techniques for her daughter's bipolar. She feels like common practice was abusive and led to all of her daughter's mental health issues. Not to sit on stairs because it will cause you to have a miscarriage. People are crazy. According to my mother, everything can cause a miscarriage. Stairs, the silent killer. Coffee? Miscarriage. Tea? Miscarriage. Too much meat? Miscarriage. Not enough meat? Miscarriage. Sewing? Miscarriage. Paddling the school canoe? Oh, you'd better believe that's a miscarriage. Had 2 miscarriages before finally having my daughter. Just bad luck chromosomal abnormalities. But she made sure to remind me not to do all those things again next time. You know, just in case. Thanks for the subtle blame, Mom. Not me, but my sister. She had to have an emergency C-section when she had my niece. Her mother-in-law said she wouldn't be a real woman unless she had a natural birth. I was 18 when I had my son and was already terrified. Had to be induced and ended up having to have a C-section because labor just wasn't progressing and his heart rate kept dropping. For the first year and a half of my son's life, my mother told me I wasn't a real mom because I had to have a C-section. My mother-in-law said it's okay to drink mixed drinks. She went on to say that my husband was a margarita baby. I now call him that when he gets on my nerves. That is hilarious. It's like, okay, margarita baby, whatever you say. My mother-in-law, don't eat spicy foods or stand under the moon. Ugh. It's the full moon, not just the moon in general. This was a decade ago and my memory sucks. The spicy thing comes from the superstition that spicy foods will give your kid a birthmark. On my very first OB visit, first baby, they handed me a book about month-by-month pregnancy and said that if I had any questions, to just refer to the book. Then I said, well, what if the baby… She cut me off right there and pointed to the book and said, it's in the book. I changed OBs. For those who are asking, my question was not in the book. I had questions about the baby being premature. My brother and I were born very premature, and I was going to ask her about it. And my baby ended up being born 3.5 months early, and I had a lot of complications prior to that. Being high risk is not fun. But he's healthy now. Wow, that is complete crap. Imagine if every doctor did that. What an idiot. Walks into doctor's office. Hey doc, I've been feeling nauseous and have had severe stomach pains for some time. Did you check WebMD? What? Did you check WebMD? Nah, I figure… I can't help people who won't help themselves. Well, seems that in some rare cases, the medical experts can be just as infuriating as the people around us, I guess. But still, folks, 99 times out of 100, listen to the people who've trained in this rather than your crazy homeopathic hippie uncle. Don't worry about the swelling and high blood pressure, that's normal, says my midwife days before being induced due to preeclampsia, literally a life-threatening condition in some cases. A+ midwifery. Oh, I've got this. The lady at the counter in the village bakery told me that I should smear my face with my man's splooge to counter pregnancy acne. It was the first time I'd ever met her. In high school, I read an article that said, in complete seriousness, women should give their men BJs every morning because morning sickness is caused by the body not being used to splooge. Younger me earnestly asked our medical teacher that question. Her tiny Christian body just froze. Looking back, it was a horrible idea and I can't believe I asked that. My entire family was super judgmental against breastfeeding for some reason. It was really strange. How long are you going to do that for? You're taking the joy of feeding the baby away from everyone, said my mother when I was breastfeeding. She came around though and ended up getting judgy about women who choose to formula feed. I'm not judgy, by the way. My mother-in-law said the same thing. She said I was preventing her son, my husband, from being a dad because I breastfed. Apparently the zillion other things he did as a parent besides feed her didn't make him a dad. What a nut. I'm in my 30s. When we had our kids, my mum kept telling me how when I was a baby, I was fed exclusively on formula because she was told by her doctors it was the best. She kept saying it, almost, but not quite, judging us for breastfeeding our own children. I honestly hear that from a lot of people our age. I'm just shy of 33. I wonder if there was a formula marketing shift in that time period. It's actually a real problem. 2 generations of women were convinced through false advertising that formula was safer and healthier. This led to a loss of cultural knowledge on breastfeeding. My in-laws were fully supportive of my breastfeeding until my baby reached 6 months old. Then it went from, "You're doing the best thing for him," to, "When are you weaning?" It doesn't expire, jeez. Ooh, I get to vent. My 4-month-old has a cold and last week he was really fussy and wouldn't take a bottle at daycare. Until then, he'd been going back and forth between breast and bottle just fine. The daycare provider asked if I was still breastfeeding and if so, could I stop so he'd take a bottle better? No. He's back to normal now. I didn't fight to breastfeed through mastitis and a gigantic mother-fricking abscess just to quit at her convenience. Bottles are fine, but we like breastfeeding too. My grandmother made a comment about my weight gain with my first pregnancy around month 5. For reference, I started severely underweight at 87 pounds and was closely monitored by my doctor because of it. At this point, I was nearing 125. When I told her that the obstetrician-gynecologist was happy with where I was, she told me of her own doctor's advice in 1956. Smoke a packet of cigarettes per day to keep your weight down. The baby can gain its own weight after birth. Thanks but no thanks, Grandma. One person told me I would never be able to fit a baby out of my body because I wasn't big enough down there, and to just get a C-section. Not a doctor. A random person who had literally never seen down there. No, I'm not going to get major surgery just because you don't think I'm large enough. I've had 2 successful natural births. My mom's a petite woman and she naturally gave birth to my brother who was really close to 10 pounds. They became quite the attraction in the hospital as people saw the monster baby, checked the room number, then saw my mom and wondered how the heck he got out of her. Pretty sure my mother-in-law had the same thing happen. My husband was a 10-pound baby with the widest shoulders on record at his hospital. That butthole neglected to tell me this until we were married. I have the sudden urge to shake my snoring boyfriend awake and demand every single one of his birth stats, shoulder width included. Are you me? This is literally the story of me. My mom barely comes up to my shoulder. I was 10 pounds, 6 ounces, and nurses stopped by for like 36 hours to see the tiny woman who gave birth to the Thanksgiving turkey. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. While pregnant with me, my mum was told that drinking beer would help her baby develop and be nice and chubby. I was 5 weeks early and barely 6 pounds. It could have been substantially worse. Apart from being a really small baby, I didn't have any fetal alcohol-related health conditions. Conversely, when my grandma was pregnant with my mum, her first, in the 50s, the accepted wisdom was that smoking while pregnant was a good idea for first-time mothers, because it lowered their birth rate, which was supposed to make labor and delivery easier. But low birth weight is extremely dangerous and makes the process harder. My mum was born 2 months early and weighed about 2 or 3 pounds. She was so tiny that my grandma dressed her in baby doll clothing and my mum spent her first month of life in the hospital's NICU. That's insane. I wonder what medical knowledge that's commonly accepted today will turn out in the future to have been disastrously wrong. That if you try really hard and stretch a lot, you too can have a natural birth. Not actually a bad plan, as long as you don't wind up not fricking dilating after 30 hours and have an emergency C-section due to fetal distress. Because I just didn't try hard and stretch enough. Taking a bath can cause a miscarriage. To be fair, it was from my husband's incredibly sweet grandmother who meant well. She was 92 years old at the time and hadn't been pregnant in a very, very long time. She also had a good number of miscarriages. My father-in-law and his sister are 15 years apart in age, so I think she was coming from a different place than most. One of my work colleagues was obsessed with recommending that I eat citrus fruits, especially the easy-to-peel cutie tangerines. She was convinced that it would give the baby a higher IQ in the long run. So not really about pregnancy advice, but someone told me to put baking soda in a cup and pee on it first thing in the morning. If it fizzed, I was pregnant with a boy. If it did not fizz, I was having a girl. If it didn't involve literal baking soda, this sounds like some of the kind of medieval tests people would conduct on themselves way back when. Like peeing on a potted seedling and its growth determining whether you're fertile or not. Silly idiots. When I found out I was pregnant a 4th time, 3 losses in a row, I heard so many from strangers. Mine isn't necessarily advice, but more open mouth insert foot. Are you sure this one's gonna work? I was also told that if I was on my cell phone or around my modem or router, it would cause brain damage to my unborn child. She's 4, perfectly healthy, no brain damage, and let's just say it took a lot of medical attention to get her to full term. What caused my miscarriages? They said my hormones couldn't sustain a pregnancy, and after the 3rd, I was told that with my hormone levels, getting pregnant again wouldn't happen. She was a surprise and the best one ever. It took an educated doctor that wanted the best outcome. Previous doctors just looked at my history and was like, sorry for your loss, maybe next time will go better. The best day of my husband and mine's life was finding out that she was alive, thriving, and having an amazing doctor who moved heaven and earth to make sure she'd make it. He was at work when I found out, and he actually yelled and his entire office heard him. He almost ran out of the office, he was more excited than me. Sitting with my legs crossed will cause a miscarriage. Don't take a bath, it'll cause a miscarriage. Lifting more than 5 pounds will cause a miscarriage. Wearing tight-fitted clothes? You guessed it, miscarriage. Spicy food could cause a miscarriage. I worked retail. A stranger informed me that morning sickness and smell sensitivity isn't real while I was heading to the bathroom to throw up. Also had a customer tell me that the baby isn't actually affecting my bladder. Had a 3rd customer tell me not to drink tap water. Can't remember why, probably causes miscarriages. My cousin tried to tell me that I had morning sickness because it's God's way of telling a woman she isn't ready for a baby. Had an anterior placenta, so we couldn't feel kicks until close to 30 weeks. My mum said there was no such thing and the reason we couldn't feel kicks is because I was fat. In conclusion, literally everything causes miscarriages and morning sickness is a lie. When I found out I was pregnant, a nurse friend of mine felt the need to rattle off an endless list of crap that could potentially be wrong with my baby. Another friend of mine, when I started telling people that I was pregnant after the 3 months and was accused of telling people too early, said, "It doesn't matter when you tell people, you could have a miscarriage at any point during your pregnancy." They both meant well, but really guys, just shut up. My grandma constantly told me not to argue with my husband because it would cause the baby to be fussy and difficult. Frozen cabbage leaves in the bra to help with swelling and pain due to breastfeeding. While it did feel awesome for the whole minute or so that they stayed frozen, they eventually turned to mush and made a mess. Advice I wish someone had given me: get a mattress protector, not just for when your water breaks. Carrying a big baby next to your bladder means the act of rolling over in a bed can cause leakage. And if you're too tired after the birth to take the baby to a changing table or the floor, you're going to want a layer of protection on your mattress. Soon as that diaper is off, the baby will projectile poop. Sheets and walls can be washed, but mattresses can't. Poop explosions are real. Prepare yourselves. Now I want to add a really good mattress cover or pad to my registry. And make sure you register for 2. When the baby pees all over the bed at 1 a.m. or your milk leaks everywhere in the middle of your night, you need a backup mattress protector for when the first one is getting washed. My mum was talking to my paternal grandma while pregnant with me, then winced because I was kicking her ribs. My grandma told her to swat it so it'll know. She wanted my mum to spank fetus me through her own belly for kicking her. After my mum told us that story, swat it so it'll know became a common response anytime someone was complaining about something. Well, I'm the husband and father, but a doctor told my 38 or 39-week pregnant wife that her condition was no excuse to not keep me satisfied in the bedroom. Not even sure why it was brought up. She was just getting a regular checkup. I wasn't even there. The doc busts out with this. Not her regular doctor. Her regular doctor was also off pregnant. She was not impressed, to say the least. So there's the advice. Being pregnant is no reason to not please your significant other. Did you pass along that helpful advice to her regular doctor? I'm sure she would have been delighted to hear that a colleague was dispensing pearls of wisdom like that. She did, actually, along with a letter to the head of medicine due to another incident. This was a new doctor and actually still on probation now. With my first baby, I had a random lady in a grocery store tell me to take a bath in bleach because it's good for the skin and for the baby's growth and development. I was mortified. I was told that heartburn during pregnancy meant that the child had a lot of head hair, had a crapload of heartburn, and kid had barely any hair. Oh, don't go swimming or the baby will drown, 25-year-old co-worker. All I could picture is the little nugget with a straw out of my hoo-ha to breathe. My friend's dad was a chiropractor. She told him that I'd had miscarriages. He told me, no wonder, you'll lose every pregnancy with a pelvis like that. Freaked me out so much, and I guess I ruined the party by crying and leaving, and my friend was mad at me. I have back trouble, yes, but I have 3 children living. My adorable father-in-law told me I had to deliver naturally. If I had C-section, I wouldn't love my baby as much because I didn't suffer for him. First of all, the kid was comfortably sitting and was not turning around, you utter butthole. I was not about to risk my kid's life in a feet-first delivery, no sir. Second, a C-section is a major surgery and a pain in the butt, believe me, I did suffer. You try being cut open like that while awake and then deal with a feisty, colicky newborn while recovering from it. Third, really? I need to feel pain in order to love my child? I can't even. Fourth, you don't even have a uterus, old man. Zip it. Ah, that felt good. Not allowed to sew either using sewing machine or by hand. It will cause the umbilical cord to tangle. Just because you almost died carrying that one, don't let it stop you from having another one because all pregnancies are different. Okay then, I could potentially have 2 motherless children. Sounds like something a responsible adult should do. I had extremely high blood pressure and the placenta dropped so low the doctor said just bending over would cause a problem. They couldn't see the bottom on ultrasound and had to use the wand. I had such bad morning sickness, and then when that was done, I had acid reflux so bad I was throwing up 3 to 10 times a day. I didn't gain any weight my whole pregnancy and couldn't eat. Doctor said just the elevation in blood pressure alone was reason enough to never do it again. Currently pregnant and currently dealing with my mother who became an anti-vaxxer 13 years ago. Just found out recently when I mentioned I got my Tdap and flu shot and I asked if everyone in the family was caught up because the baby is due next month and the flu season is right around the corner. She called me a freaking idiot for putting rotting DNA in my body while pregnant. She refuses to get a flu shot, so I refuse to let her see her first grandchild. Not taking chances with my kid's life because you can't be bothered to do legitimate research or listen to me when I try and explain it to you. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.